Hello, everyone. Let me know if my voice is coming in clear and we've got this stream off the ground. It's been, well, first I should apologize for being late. Originally, this was going to start at 2. Turns out, when you've got some construction that's only supposed to go for an hour, it ends up going for 3. So that happened. Um, I don't even really know what construction was going on. It was a floor beneath mine involving plumbing or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's all gone now. The people have packed up, they've left, and I'm here free of any noise unless my neighbors start blasting music or something. But that's probably not going to happen. And, okay. Feeling good. Was a little, out of breath and frazzled because of that. But, now I feel like the spirit of this week is flowing back into me because this has just been such a lovely week. Just so many good things happened, uh, which is ironic because it started off kind of bad in that I missed the eclipse. For those who don't know, there was an eclipse here, well, in North America, in certain parts. I happen to be living in Toronto, which was a pretty good spot in the eclipse zone, but it turns out that uh, the clouds just decided to show up and cover up everyone's in eclipse. I was gonna miss it either way because I forgot to get one of those like glasses that would protect your eyes, and I was like, oh well, I guess I don't want to risk my vision here, so I'll miss the eclipse. But then the clouds show up and everybody missed it, so that happened. Um, and I think a lot of people unfortunately missed the eclipse, but a lot of people got to enjoy it. If you did, I hope it was a life changing experience. Uh, Maybe next time, uh, in however many years it'll have to be. Uh, Also, it was kind of interesting that like everyone went to Niagara Falls for that. I think they said like they had over 1 million people there, which made me really happy to not be in Niagara Falls. For generally, I'm not a huge fan of the city. It's a little too touristy for my taste, and then they just like ramped it up to maximum. I'm like, oh man, that sounds rough. But yeah, so I guess 2044 is when the next one's gonna happen. 20 years. Let's hope we're all still around in 20 years. Uh, we'll see. Statistically, uh, the odds are pretty good, let's say. So, Eclipse, that's how it started. But some good stuff that happened this week is I've been working on a new video, and I had been working on it so hard, literally editing it together. And I was thinking, like, oh, I hope I can get this done by Saturday. I was like, I'm going to be working on this like right up to before I have to go on stream, and it's going to be rough. And oh, I'm not going to be able to prep for the stream. I got it done yesterday. I got it done yesterday at like 2 p.m. I mean, the rough cut, I should say. It's not ready to be seen by the people yet. And it is my longest video ever, 2 hours and 38 minutes so far. That time might change. I might have to edit a few things out. But this is a very, very big one. It's going to be another retrospective, naturally. And I hope people who are more into my political content give this one a shot just because this show is remarkably important. It's also deeply political. So if you're interested in a bit more of a history around television, specifically the 1970s, this one will be right up your alley. As for what show it is, I feel like saying the 1970s is a huge hint. Um, I don't know. I guess I can share it. Or do we want to play a game? Do we want to see if you guys can guess it? Does anyone in the chat want to venture a guess at what prominent 1970s sitcom is the one I'll be covering in the next retrospective video? Uh, a lot of guesses for MASH. I'll tell you right now, no. Uh, MASH is a good guess, but no. Maybe I should do MASH at some point. And Code Shay already got it. It's All in the Family. Yeah. All in the Family. I don't mind sharing it because if someone can somehow get an All in the Family video out before me, and it's going to be as big and comprehensive as mine, I would just applaud them. Um, it's it's going to be heavy, everyone, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I feel very strongly about this one. Um, I actually haven't watched it yet. The series I've watched, I mean, my own video, I finished it and I just went back to make a few changes last night, and it's like, it's looking pretty good, but I still need to watch it from beginning to end. If you never knew anything about it, you absolutely need to watch. There is going to be at least one section. I always think of this section in particular because it's the one that made me the most emotional. Uh, it's, yeah. We'll just wait for the video then. And got a question here from Poker. Do you have any advice for making videos the same way I do? I'm getting into making videos and I want to see if you have any advice. I would recommend that you make something you want to see. Make a video that you would like if it existed that doesn't currently exist. I know pleasing yourself is not always the best way of getting a big audience, but if you start with that, you can at least create something you're proud of. I don't think anyone should go into YouTube with the expectation of becoming a big YouTube person, because that's not always realistic. And at the end of the day, even if it's just something you make that you and a couple of people see, that you can look back and say, I'm proud of it. That's still something good, instead of just trying to chase an algorithm or an audience. So just start with that. If you don't even think about whether or not you're copying me, if you imitate me in some way, whatever, but think mostly about what you want to see and make that video. Someone asked, will I mention the people who don't get the show and like Archie because he says what everyone's thinking? I do talk on that briefly. I explore more the idea of how Archie is presented as this lovable bigot, which is a weird thing. It's like an oxymoron. And that's one of the main questions I struggle with in the show. Somebody meant, does it hold up since it was created in 1971? Absolutely. There are a couple of episodes. I didn't even mention the one in the video where there's like an episode where they're like, computers, oh no, they could screw everything up, and it's really funny, and it's so 1970s. Like, computers make mistakes, as if people don't also make mistakes. But then there are some episodes where it's like so relevant. Like, this could be about today. Like, this could happen in the present. You could broadcast this episode and it would still be so relevant. Just really shocking. Someone asked if I mentioned Alf Garnett. Of course I will. There's a little bit in the beginning about Till Death Us Do Part. Not in too much detail. It's the connections between the two shows are not terribly strong. Then again, I couldn't watch much of the original run of Till Death Us Do Part because some of those are missing. For those who don't know, All in the Family was actually based off of a British show called Till Death Us Do Part. And although it's really more influenced by Norman Lear's father, which is why I go into more detail there. But yeah, I don't want to... God, everyone's like bringing up stuff. There's an episode where his daughter loses a baby. That's when Gloria has a miscarriage. That's in the first season. They did a miscarriage episode in like episode 6. This show goes so hard, so fast. And there's some, just really impressive stuff. Anyway, I'm very excited about this video. I can't wait for people to see it. I don't want to just make this stream about how great this video is going to be, though, but I hope people all give it a shot. Watch it many times if you have to, because, it's, yeah, and yes, this guy, that was the first season. Okay. What else happened this week that was really good? Yeah, we got nearly we got a nice turnout today. Wow, everyone wants to see me dunk on Ben Shapiro, and I'm kind of debating, do I talk about the lawsuit thing first or the Ben Shapiro thing first, because they're both a lot of fun. The lawsuit doesn't involve me, but it was something I was reading up on yesterday. It involves people from this channel who have been featured on this channel, like your Tim Pools, your Steven Crowders, some not so great folks. Yeah, so let's maybe the lawsuit first, because not many people know about it. Let me pull up the news article. The lawyer who was representing Mauricio Garcia in this, who's the person who is now suing a number of different outlets. Uh, the lawyer is Mark Bankston. You might recognize him as the guy who helped sue Alex Jones. And yeah, that turned out pretty well. So we can look at the article, I guess. But this is a pretty big deal. Someone asked how I'm holding up. Pretty well, pretty well. So if you didn't catch that interview yesterday on the Majority Report, it basically went. So Mauricio Garcia, who was 36 years old, was falsely identified as a shooter in a mass shooting incident in the U.S. I want to say 2 years ago, or was it a year ago? Anyway, a number of right-wing outlets started running this guy's face because he had the same name as the shooter, even though it was a completely different guy. And that's obviously not cool because he's a private citizen. Everyone was like labeling him as some sort of white supremacist killer because the murderer was a white supremacist. He was later identified by a journalist from Bellingcat. They found his social media posts and he had like swastika tattoos and all this stuff. And that's when we should have seen a bunch of retractions come from these various right-wing outlets, but they did not put up retractions. They just sort of ruined this innocent guy's life because he happens to have a name that's similar to a killer's name. And then they just kind of moved on, which is really grotesque. Some of the people, where's the list of all the people who are being sued by this guy? So we've got Fox News, Newsmax, Hollywood Unlocked, which I have never heard of, Televisa Univision, which is the broadcaster of Univision, and Today News Africa, another one I wasn't familiar with, and then some podcasters where you got your Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, and Owen Schroyer. If you're not familiar with Owen Schroyer, he's Alex Jones's, I guess, protege? I don't know. He's sort of the second banana on InfoWars, which is kind of ridiculous to say because there is no InfoWars without Alex Jones. If you're not, he was also recently in prison for his role in January 6th, where he served 30 days or something in prison. He's not a great dude. But of course, obviously more interesting to people who watch this channel are Tim Pool and Steven Crowder being named. Like, oof, oof. Steven Crowder, of course, has much bigger, well, I don't know, bigger, but he has other issues with, his ongoing legal woes involving his divorce. And Tim Pool, of course, finally getting sued for the misinformation he spreads, mostly because you can get away with a lot when you make all sorts of unfounded accusations towards public-facing people. But private citizens actually have a much greater degree of protection when it comes to sharing misinformation about them, or basically lying about who they are. As is outlined in the case, they describe how the plaintiff here his face was put over various articles on Tim Pool's various websites and news articles, probably Timcast. I know one of the Timcast IRL videos used his picture and for their thumbnail. And what was really funny about this, and this was something I saw in the interview yesterday at the Majority Report, is when the lawyers started reaching out to these various entities, of course, when you're going to sue someone, you're going to be talking to other lawyers, and he tried to get in touch and they put them in contact with their lawyers, and that's basically what you want to do. With the exception being Tim Pool, who decided he would speak with him directly without any lawyer present, which is, wow. I feel like that encapsulates the guy so well, because you have to be a special kind of fool to think that you can speak to a lawyer who's currently suing you and not be worried that you might accidentally say something or in some way intimate anything that could be used against you. You only talk through lawyers. That's, I don't know, that's so basic that literally everyone else being sued here knew to do that, but not him, of course. I'm sure he thought he could talk around the lawyer. Um, they also mentioned that they took steps to address the claim. I'll give him credit that they took down the articles where they identified the wrong guy as the shooter, which is literally the least they could do. But they did not issue any retraction, which is sort of the main thing. And that's kind of Tim Pool's MO whenever he's caught doing something wrong and is in some public way, or in this case with legal threat, has to take action. He does it as low key and quiet as possible. That's the thing about it too. I don't know, he's kind of a coward, to put it mildly. He's a huge coward. So he tries to make any of his sort of failures and shortcomings less public, I've noticed. But he'll still acknowledge them. He'll talk a big game about, for instance, standing up for free speech and, speaking truth to power. But if YouTube in any way, shape, or form, tries to stand up to him or tell him not to put up certain content, he'll take down streams. He'll stop talking about certain things. He'll make a stink about oh, I can't talk about this because of YouTube, but he would never risk his monetization. I mean, although I don't particularly care for Steven Crowder, he'll at least go down with saying his dumb crap and getting his channel suspended on YouTube for 30 days. I know he does it and he tries to lean into the marketing there, oh, I'm getting banned on YouTube, blah blah blah, but he's still doing it. He's willing to take the hit because the marketing buzz you get from being banned is often not worth not being on YouTube, because vanishing for a little bit really does hurt you in the algorithm. And Tim just doesn't do that. He's terrified of something like that. So yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you what's going to happen in any of this case. It is it is great to see some consequences finally show up for these goofs. I'm trying to figure out how to say this name. Directive 4 saying Emma Vigeland could sue him. She could. It'd be a tougher case for her. For those who aren't familiar, after she was on his show, Tim Pool said that Emma was a pedophile, basically, because I don't know, she doesn't have a problem with trans affirming care or something. And you can sue someone for that, but as a public figure, it's a lot tougher to do that, even though in this case, I don't know, maybe she'll have a case. Maybe she should talk to a lawyer. Yeah, these are, it'll be interesting what happens. I imagine Fox News will probably settle for some amount of money, and Univision, something similar. Newsmax, I don't know, I think they can afford lawyers. They'll probably do something similar. And I don't know about Hollywood Unlocked or Today News Africa. No idea what scale they're working at. But the podcasters, can Owen Schroyer afford a settlement? I doubt it. Steven Crowder and Tim Pool might. It remains to be seen. I so hope that they fight this. I mean, they're going to try and get it dismissed. Hopefully that won't happen. But I really hope they try and take this to court because, I mean, they were talking yesterday on the Majority Report about discovery and what that would mean. And we'd find all sorts of interesting stuff through that. But I really want to see depositions. I want to see them I want to see what kind of cases they bring. And oh my God, what lawyers they hire. Oh, I imagine they'd get I don't remember his first name, but a lawyer named Barnes who, is it Robert Barnes? Anyway, he represented Alex Jones for a little bit and some other folks. But he's now trying to be some sort of social media influencer type, and it'd be, oh man, that would be so funny to see. Anyway, this has all been very amusing, and I wanted to share this news with people. I don't know if I have a ton of commentary. I mean, we could read a little bit from the actual petition here. It did make me laugh, some of it. It's a bit dry. Louder with Crowder, LLC, and Steven Crowder failed to exercise reasonable care in verifying the accuracy of the photograph they repeatedly published to depict a mass murderer. Oh, and that reminds me. When Tim Pool would then later talk about how the reporting from Bellingcat, which looked at the social media profile of the actual shooter, was like a psyop, and like, oh, they're showing the face, but they really should verify it. Apparently unaware that his own website was showing the innocent man's face and not verifying that. Like, what irony? What irony? Like wagging your finger at journalists who not only identify the right person, but actually look into it in a way that the people who work for Tim Pool never have. And in fact, will respond to that accurate reporting and call it a psyop. Insane stuff. And we got a super chat here, I will acknowledge. Plixiplox with $2. Love your videos. Vids. Make them more frequently. I wish I could. When I have a giant 2.5 hour video coming out, though, it kind of sucks up a lot of time. Although I do have another video and idea that's going to be a lot shorter that probably won't take nearly as long and won't be 2.5 hours, but it's very interesting and I really like the idea. And it's going to be it's going to be more political and in a way that's, I think it's going to get a lot of attention. Some people are going to get upset about me, but that's fine. That's fine. Someone asked what the 2 hour video is about. Kurt, that is going to be about All in the Family. It's going to be another sitcom retrospective. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm very excited about this. Give Jose enough money to make a clone machine. Neko Yoko, that's a good idea. I don't know how much money I need for that, so just keep giving me money until I figure it out, right? No, I'd feel bad doing that, but whew. I think some of you noticed. I've got a bit of energy in me because of all of this. It's been so much fun, right? Pigpen, hope you didn't get a bunch of heat from that critical drinker video. Yeah, there was, but it's, I expected that, but it's fine. You want to hear something interesting about that? So a lot of people got upset at me because I liked, I don't know, Star Trek Picard or whatever. Or some people want to defend critical drinkers' hate for whatever. The comments I found more revolting were the one, because I made a very brief mention of, the various crimes Israel is committing in Gaza right now. And I find people who object to me talking about that far more obnoxious than people who are upset about me over what I think about a movie. And I think that really helps keep things in perspective in my mind. At the end of the day, I don't plan on making a habit of going after or talking about the sort of, I don't know, people talking about Marvel movies and whatever and all that stuff. I think it's a joke, but it's also not something I'm terribly bothered by. People were warning me in advance. If you make a video about this guy, his fans are gonna say mean things about you, and it's like, whatever. A lot of those claims just sort of roll off my back. And they're just more important things than what someone says or doesn't say about a movie. Of course, when they use that commentary to push people towards the right and, our buddy with the Daily Wire, I think it raises the stakes a little, It's not just someone who has a bad take on movies. And I'm glad people at least got that message. And, it's funny looking at the response to that video. It got more comments than any video I've done, period. Just so many, so many comments. And the upvote rate was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. It's somewhere around 77% upvotes, which is not great overall. But it's, I don't know. I expected to see more of the guy's fans show up and angrily downvote them. And to be honest, a lot of people in his audience showed up to that video and left very nice comments. They were like, you know what? You made me rethink some of his commentary and I'm going to be more skeptical. Or some people just said outright, I unsubbed because this guy clearly is not very good. Which is fine. It's lovely to know there's a positive impact there. I think it's just easier for me because I have a very large audience, so I can absorb those sorts of hits. Just to respond to what Birdie's saying there, I am handling it pretty well because at the end of the day, it's It's just people talking about movies in the comment section, I should say. And while a lot of people don't seem to understand some of the points I'm making, that's kind of par for the course. It is what it is. I'm ready to move on. As far as I know, just to answer a question, I don't know if he's acknowledged the video. I don't know. I don't really care that much. And to be honest, I get it why if someone made a video about me and it had hundreds of thousands of views and was talking about how I was terrible, I would be very reluctant to click that video or even talk about it in public, because it's not fun watching someone tear you down. And it's I get that. I get it. It doesn't mean people shouldn't talk about a person, of course, and the sort of videos they produce, but it does create some hesitancy. I mean, I know I've tried watching certain videos about me in the past that were like critical of my work. They were not great. They didn't really bother me so much as they just seemed like a huge waste of time. I remember there was a guy made a 1 hour video about me one time, and you wouldn't know it if you actually watched the video because he uses the wrong name the whole time. Like, he confused me with another channel, and in the description he's like, "Oh, sorry, I was saying this. I meant Jose. I was talking about Jose the whole time." And it's like, if you're going to make a 1 hour video and you get the name of the channel wrong through the whole thing, maybe redo the video, is what I'm saying here. Maybe redo the video. Was it an hour? It might have been 40 minutes. Whatever. Way too long to get the name wrong the whole time. This was a few years ago too, by the way, for anyone who is curious. And no, he didn't. Someone, null potential, the bird named Sean doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't even confuse me with someone who is like similar in style. It's very, very different. The person he mentioned, I don't even remember who he confused me with. I just remember thinking, that guy? Really? But there you go. Anyway, I'm sort of, I guess, over that whole part of YouTube. Some people have been asking me to make a video about nerdrotic and the types, and it's like, it honestly took me a very long time to muster the energy and interest to even cover Critical Drinker, who's like the biggest person in that space. To talk about anyone else, I don't know. I don't know. It seems unlikely in my mind. I know it'll get views, but oof. It's a little too exhausting. Adrian Genge or Genge, maybe you can like tell me how to say your name properly. That would be nice. Because I like pronouncing names properly. With the $5 super chat, thank you. Good videos, thank you for the super chat. That's a lot of thank yous, isn't it? It's always good to thank people, isn't it? And just to address, someone mentioned in the chat, I forgot who it was. Thank you for the lovely person who mentioned this in the chat. Going back to the lawsuit that Steven Crowder in his thing, we're talking about how all these other like mainstream outlets are afraid of mentioning the shooter's name, but we're going to mention it. And then they put a picture up of the wrong guy, even though mainstream outlets had all like shared the name of this shooter. So he just lied about that. Anyway, I just wanted to note that as well, because someone brought that up in the chat, and that's a good thing to mention. What are we on to tackling today, Jose? Asked by Mark Matten, Magma M3. We're going to be looking at a book written in 2011 by a guy named Ben Shapiro, and he talks about television. It's disastrously bad. Like, just, wow, is it so bad? The number of things it gets wrong is shocking. Absolutely shocking. But hey, we're going to go through it. Not the whole thing, of course, because it's a whole book. And there's so much I want to talk about it, though. So, sorry, Adrian Genji. You like your name pronounced. I can pronounce how I like, but you like it as Genji, and that's what I can go with as the Overwatch character. I remember when I played Overwatch, Genji was always a character I could not get into. He always seemed so hard to use. I was more of I usually played support, but Zenyatta was my guy. I also love Junkrat just because he's hard to play well, but once you start getting good with Junkrat, it's so satisfying. Anyway, that's my Overwatch sidebar. I haven't played it in years because I do not like Overwatch 2. Predatory monetization is bad, everyone. Um, some stalwart Tirith. Instead of talking about Ben Shapiro, could we do something more entertaining, like going to a dentist, maybe a surprise final exam, literally anything? Some days we have to stand up and do some difficult things. Um, it's not always fun, but this will actually be fun. You're gonna learn a lot about TV, because when I saw this book, let's pull it up. Um, let's pull it up first. Yeah, and I have some supporting material here. Good, good, good. There we are. Primetime propaganda. The true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV. So this story about classic television and complete fools like Ben Shapiro, this really feels like this was something that was made just for me. Like, this is a Jose book. It's classic TV plus like an absolute clown like Ben Shapiro. What's not to love? This was something he wrote in 2011, and yeah, it represents that moment in time. So we should be aware of that. This came out after the sex book, according as B. Parker is questioning. This is his, I want to say his third book, but let's actually look that up so I can at least be accurate here. Oh no, it's his fourth book. His first one was Brainwashed, How Universities Indoctrinate America's Youth. His next one was Porn Generation, How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future. Then he did Project President, Bad Hair and Botox on the Road to the White House. And that was in 2008. And that left us with this, his fourth book. And someone asking, like, what TV did they take over? Because I'd want more left on my TV. And very, very much, that will encapsulate one of the big problems I have with this book. When he says the left, he means anything to the left of him. That includes liberals, leftists. He basically calls them all socialists or Marxists or anti-capitalist, whatever label he cares to put on the left at that time. He doesn't treat it with any sort of distinction. It's all just one homogenous blob. And when you're on the right saying that, that's kind of ridiculous. That's like me saying, talking about the right wing, and I lump in, like, I don't know, centrist liberals, conservatives, and white nationalists, Those are all various right-wing ideologies. They're all very different and in many ways compete with one another. So a lot of differences there. A lot of differences that he just does not acknowledge. This also includes more detail about his history as a failed screenwriter in Hollywood. Some details I did not know, and I'm so happy he shared them with us. But this is gonna be fun, everyone. I've highlighted certain parts about as we go along. Hopefully those highlights are still intact. This is obviously a PDF. So where do we start? Where's my first highlight? Okay. This is him responding to Friends. Pregnant lesbians and three-parent households portrayed as not only normal, but admirable. Does anyone remember that episode of Friends? He describes it up here, and it's the one with the birth. That was describing when Ross's ex-wife was having a baby, and there was like they were arguing about who'd be raising the kid, like Carol and her lover, or and Ross wanted to be more part of it. And then Phoebe brings up the whole thing about how, like, isn't it great that there are three parents who want to take care of this kid, which is nice and good. But to Ben, that's three-parent households portrayed as not only normal, but admirable. They were not presented as normal. This was actually completely abnormal. That was part of the joke. It was a very unusual situation. But this is sort of par for the course. Anytime there is a specifically odd or unique thing happening on television, Ben is going to argue that this is TV trying to make it seem like it's normal. This is all trying to normalize everything, which is Not always true. I don't think anyone would argue that a three-parent household is normal. Um, Also, they weren't a three-parent household. Ross lived apart from them. He was just involved in the parenting of his son because he wants to be there for his son. That's actually nice. Um, and there we go. Yes, this was the first season. Also, someone noticed that my scrolling wheel is loud. This is a new mouse, so the scroll wheel is still being broken in, I guess. I can be a little quieter if you like, though. See, look at how quiet that is. Television's best and brightest wanted to see America sliding down the slippery slope away from its Judeo-Christian heritage and towards a more cultivated, refined, Europeanized sensibility. This is his fear. Just, wow. I think that captures his problem with television. This whole video is about him making the case for a grand conspiracy theory. It's going to get very interesting. And I just want to thank Stalwart Tirith for the $5 super chat. Joking aside, thank you for all you do. Channels like yours are what really got me into more left-leaning stuff and how I learned more media literacy. That's such a lovely thing to say. I'm glad people are moving a little further left and getting better with their media literacy. I like to think of my channel as something that's a bit more accessible to that kind of stuff. Basically trying to, particularly with media literacy, I sometimes see media literacy on YouTube that's either very bad in that, well, I made a whole video about that recently, didn't I? Or it's almost too clever. That is, sometimes you're just watching a video and it's like, I don't think I could ever be as clever as so-and-so as they talk about this series in ways I had never even thought of. But I like to think that media literacy is for everyone, and no work of art is beyond an interpretation, and no interpretation is completely without merit. There are some bad ones out there, but they usually at least have something to them, or something that can be gleaned from them, some type of appreciation of a work of art. And anyone can do it, even if it's not the deepest stuff. So I mix a lot of like deep and not so deep media criticism for that reason. And I hope people can make use of that. Okay. Why are we obsessed with the things we don't like? I don't know. It's fun though, isn't it? For me. There's a little too much of that on YouTube though. A lot of sort of negativity or anger towards things is, and I don't know. I like to think I talk about good things as well. I mean, the next video is going to be very positive. And Shapiro, keep waiting for that Beverly Hillbilly retrospective because it ain't coming anytime soon. All right. Oh yeah, someone asked if this is going to be available to watch later, and I should have answered that quicker. It will be up. There is a list of streams, a playlist under my channel. They're unlisted though, so they're not in like the main feed. You have to go to live or something, or playlists. It's probably under playlists. And there's there with all the streams. Whew. Okay, let's move on. A lot of people, I was looking at the reviews of this book, and they talked about how Ben Shapiro did a good job of describing TV history. And he does a good job insofar that he presents broad strokes, but whenever he discusses details, he often leaves out key points in information, or he'll just lie about stuff and make things up. I'll point those out as we go along. And we'll scroll down a little bit more. Here's a nice quote about him talking about the First Amendment was created to protect political speech, not curse words or fart jokes. So he does not like the idea of the First Amendment being used to protect certain types of artistic expression, specifically TV shows that use curse words and fart jokes, which is wrong. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I do think the First Amendment protects a lot more than political speech. What's more, the idea that curse words or fart jokes are not part or can't be part of political speech is ridiculous. And I think it speaks to his very, very, very shallow, shallow understanding of all of this. Sorry. Someone just pointed in chat. Lightning Farron, am I dissing you for your 30th hate video on Star Wars and with your thumbnail of Ray crying? Yes, yes. I'm calling out you and only you because you're the only person doing that. Apparently, I can't believe it. I am. YouTube was such a good place until your one channel did that, didn't it? Anyway, I'm gonna take a sip of water here, and as usual, I do not know what to do with the silence. Also, wow, I just want to know, a lot of people here, over 800 viewers. I want to thank you all for showing up. I didn't expect this many people, but it's lovely to see, lovely, especially since I don't stream very often. This stream might even be a two-parter because I'm pretty sure we're not getting it through this whole book. And if you enjoyed hearing the drinking, that's so I can prove to you that I am in fact drinking. I don't want to. I don't want to be like some sort of fraud who doesn't actually drink when he's on stream. Anyway, I like this statement here. Perhaps that's because I'm a member of that younger generation that grew up on television. Television has been around in the 1950s. Kids have been growing up with television long before Ben Shapiro. But this is him actually listing one of his bona fides for being able to write this book. He's like, well, I grew up watching television. It's like, oh, really, Ben? You and what, tens of millions of other people? Shocking. I'm really impressed that you have this unique insight. Someone asked what I'm drinking. Water. I'm drinking water. Nothing fancy. I actually almost never drink anything too fancy. I usually drink water, tea. That's about it. Sometimes I'll drink like, I don't know, sparkling cider, but like the non-alcoholic kind. I guess I have very boring beverage tastes. I don't drink alcohol at all. Isn't that wild? I never have. But there you go. I have had it in the past. I just don't like it. It's kind of a weird thing. My family actually has a history making wine, which sounds a lot more impressive than it really was. They were basically farmers who didn't have a lot of money, and they would have to sell lots of wines for very little money in Spain. It was a thing. And that was sort of a thing my dad kept up when he moved here. He would make it at home. So in our laundry room, there would be like all these bottles of wines he'd make over years and years. And it was just sort of like, a thing in the household. And if I wanted to try a sip of wine, my parents would be like, yeah, that's okay. And I tried it. I hated it. And I just never really got back into it. And a lot of people, I think, grow up with this mystique around alcohol. It's like, ooh, when I turn 18, I can suddenly drink. In Canada, it's 18. I guess in the States, it's 21. Anyway, I think kids drink a little younger than that these days. But for me, there was none of that mystique was there. So I never really felt the pull of drinking alcohol. It's, I'll do it every now and again. The last time I drank was at my parents', they had an anniversary, and I drank a glass of this port that was like 40 something years old or something, which they had been saving for many, many, many years. And it was good. I never drank after that, but as like a once in a while thing. Anyway, that was the sidebar in alcohol, everyone. I hope you all found that very interesting. Someone asked what part of Spain my family is from. We are from Galicia. That's in the northwest, the little bit above Portugal, for those who are unfamiliar. It's a lovely part of the country. It's very green, unlike other parts of Spain that are a bit more arid. Someone guessing Basque. No, not even close. That's the other side of the country. Anyway, here's another passage. Most conservatives in Hollywood don't work today, at least not openly. That's not because conservatives are untalented or unqualified or incapable of empathy, as many on the left ridiculously attend. It's because liberals employ a mirror form of McCarthyism on a large scale. And that's one of those things that's just not true. It is tougher to get into show business if you're conservative, not because of your political leanings, but something Ben actually points out in this in this book, which was surprising. It's more about who you know, and people are more likely to be friends with people who are similar to them politically. That's a type of bias that does exist in Hollywood. But the problem with Ben's whole book is that he thinks it's all about conservatism, that the most important part is the conservatism. And here it is, insane. I wasn't sure there was discrimination against conservatives until it happened to me. Isn't that just a classic conservative take? It's like, there's no discrimination until it happens to me. Now there is conservative. Now there's discrimination. So he'll did I highlight much of this? He describes his story, and I'll summarize it here for everyone, about how when he was working on this book specifically, he actually was offered an opportunity to write a spec script for a TV show called, or no, wait, it started off with him getting a meeting with an agent or something, or he wrote a spec script for something called The Good Wife, if anyone remembers that show. He wrote the script and they liked it enough that they hooked him up with an agent. No, wait, this is how it all worked out. This time for real. He wrote like a pitch, a pilot idea for a thing he had that just didn't work out. They didn't like it, but he still got an agent because he was interviewing a person at a network, and he connected him with an agent. They're like, oh, you might have something here, kid. And eventually, that's when the agent got him to write a spec script for The Good Wife. And then to hear him tell it, what happened next was a producer saw his script and was just like, I'm not going to work with that guy because I know exactly who he is. And then Ben was like, I can't believe I'm being discriminated against for being a conservative. And that's his broad telling of the story. Here's the real issue with this telling of the story. Number one, no one starts from where he starts, right? Like, his family works in Hollywood. His parents are in the industry. His aunt and uncle are in the industry. His cousin is Mara Wilson. He's got so many family connections on in the industry that he has a huge, huge benefit there. And that's how he was able to get these meetings. Like, you don't just get a meeting with some random guy because you're working on a book. I shouldn't say random guy. I meant to say a random guy within like the Hollywood industry. And he was talking to a producer. Like, if that's your starting point, you are on an enormous amount of privilege right now. This is huge. That's what he's sort of missing right there. Like, he had a huge, massive advantage just to get his script seen by these major people, to get an agent. And he seems to think it was just his talent. He doesn't mention any of like how he was able, like his family connections that got him there. And then when the person who rejected him, this unnamed producer, he specifically mentions how Ben, he was familiar with Ben's work. Keep in mind, he's already written 3 books, including things like The Porn Generation, or how Hollywood is trying to brainwash everyone. And he was writing a column, like saying all this dumb conservative crap. He's not just being discriminated against because he's a conservative person. It's because he's actively writing and publishing a lot of conservative propaganda, basically. If you're familiar with Ben Shapiro's work, you know that it's not just like, oh, he thinks like maybe the tax rate should change. It's like, no, he believes in some pretty extreme stuff. And he is being personally singled out, not for his identity as a conservative, but for being Ben Shapiro, an online conservative weirdo. But he just extrapolates that to mean, oh, it's just because I'm a conservative, and they hate all conservatives. And it's amazing how he can understand the idea of identity groups when it applies to, can be construed as applying to him. Okay. Lala Yama, or Lama? I say Yama because it's how you say it in Spanish. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hi, Jose. Really appreciate how much time, effort, and thought you put into all of your it vids. Also, not to be weird, but you have such a nice voice. Thank you so much. That's actually not weird. I like it when people say my voice is nice. That doesn't stop people from being weird about my voice, but you were not. So thank you for that. And the super chat. So anyway, we're going to scroll a little further here. Here's the moment, actually. One of our agents Googled you and found your website, he told me. My stomach dropped. I'm not sure we can represent you because he thinks your political views will make it impossible for you to get a job in this town. Just like that, straight out. See, it's not just that he's a conservative. It's that he has a website, that he has a presence. Here's a story I'll share with you about how I lost a job opportunity because of my YouTube channel. This was, when was this? This was over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I had been in contact with someone. And keep in mind, this was a job opportunity that I had not because of my work, because in this case, Ben only had these interviews with like Hollywood executives because of his family connections and the fact that he was working on a book and he had like a contract for that. A book contract he got from his like weird conservative writings. For me, I had a job offer that was basically mine for let's say a media outlet, a pretty big one here in Canada. If I had gotten that job, that would have been pretty good. It wouldn't have been like, well, possibly life-changing, but it was an entry point into honestly something that probably would have pulled me away from YouTube long term, which I had not really wanted to do, but it could have gone that way. I don't know. I was willing to explore the possibility. And I basically was trying to be upfront, by the way. I have a YouTube channel where I do a lot of work, and some of it is, there's some media criticism there. And the guy who was hiring, or was interviewing me, like looked into it. And he basically sent me a message, because he was like gonna call me. He was there to offer me the job. We were on the phone talking. We'd already done the interview and I had mentioned it before. And he's like, it's like, oh, and by the way, you mentioned you had a channel. Can I like just get that again so I take another look at it before we make any like send you over the papers? And I'm like, sure. So I sent it to him, and then I didn't hear from him for a while, for many hours. And then I realized like, I feel like this is gonna go a certain way. And then when he got back to me, he was like, yeah, I don't think we can really hire you because yeah, some of your work is just a little too politically charged, and you talk about certain competitors of ours that could be construed a certain way. And I'm like, okay. I knew what was going on, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they just have an anti-left-wing bias here. They're just going after the left. That's ridiculous. I am someone who is producing videos for a wide audience online. And that's why they didn't feel comfortable hiring me, because if my name was attached to their company, they would worry that their company would be associated with my channel, and they may not want to endorse everything that's on the channel, which makes sense to me and is completely reasonable. I thank the guy for his time, and I don't know, maybe if this YouTube thing goes all south, I'll reach out to him again and see what happens. But it's entirely reasonable to let something like, or for something that to happen and not turn it into some persecution narrative. Ugh, that was my chair. My chair clicks a little bit. So that's why Ben's thing in particular rings hollow to my ears. He just, he doesn't seem to understand that circumstances create things that don't necessarily feed into some large victimhood mentality. Someone asking, this is not a premiere flick with, this is a stream. I don't do them very often, but we're just having a good time mocking this book. All right, let's go to the next section I highlighted. I like this. If 50% of the country is conservative, you'd expect at least 30% of the Hollywood crowd to be. It isn't. The nice thing is he doesn't cite any statistics here. That could be true, that less than 30% of Hollywood is not conservative. But this is, it's his book just through and through. He's always just asserting things and never backing them up with a source. He's not polling anyone. He's not pulling up any data from anywhere. Also, 50% of the country is conservative is actually not accurate. God, what is the number? It's like closer to 40%, isn't it? That's not because the remaining 6% are on the left. There's a lot of people who identify as being centrist, basically, or unaffiliated with the left or right. I think that's generally a silly position to have, but nonetheless, people do identify that way. So yeah, the facts guy doesn't really bring a lot of facts, and this is just something he does in his book constantly. It really frustrates. We must understand that television is the exclusive domain of a select few who use the mystique of the industry to mask their own political propagandizing. We must correct the state of affairs if we want to improve television. Um, so yeah, this isn't just a book observing a phenomenon, it's a call to action. I haven't gotten to that part of the book yet, so we can't really talk about it too much, but um, it's funny because he presents this book not as like his opinions on TV shows, although there's a lot of that in there. He thinks this is some kind of hard fact-based approach to understanding the origins of various TV shows. There's an entire chapter or section of a chapter we're just going to skip over where he just talks about various people in Hollywood who are on the left. And it'll be like, oh, did you know so-and-so went to this school and they once were at like an Obama fundraiser or something. And it's something that could have easily been handled with if he had done a simple, like, I don't know, presented a statistic. Or if he said like, this percentage of people in Hollywood donated to Obama or something. I don't know, anything like that. But all these like little anecdotes, it's just not enough. It's not enough to describe an entire industry that's made up of like hundreds of thousands of people. Just very, very lazy stuff. The box in your living room has been invading your mind, subtly shaping your opinions, pushing you to certain socio-political conclusions for years. And then this sentence, there is no more subversive social force than culture. I kind of want to take these one at a time, but let's do that second one first. What does that mean? There is no more subversive social force than culture? How is culture subversive? I really hate how culture, a word that is very hard to pin down a definition to, is used so freely and almost meaninglessly. I mean, there are subversive elements within culture, but I wouldn't call culture subversive. It's an example of his writing just being very bad. It's just bad writing. Also, this idea that TV is changing everyone's mind. This is another big part of his conspiracy theory, basically, is that people didn't get more liberal or left-wing. It's because TV changed their minds. And now the reason they want left-wing stuff is because TV has programmed them to be more left-wing. Just no, like that's a flat out no. You're vastly overestimating the power of television. I'm not going to say television has no impact on anyone ever, but you can't just sort of broadly say these sorts of things as if no one would want to watch these left-wing shows unless they were indoctrinated into watching left-wing shows. It's one of those unfalsifiable positions, because like, how do you disprove that? Because it's like asserted without any sort of evidence. It's just a sort of a circular logic, by virtue of like saying like, I don't know, if people were really into conservative shows, it's like, oh, that's just because all they've ever seen are conservative shows and they've been brainwashed that way. It's like, really though? Like, is that how television just formed? Like one day people decided we're going to put a bunch of left-wing shows on the air and force people to go into left-wing things. That very much is how Ben presents stuff, but it's silly. It's deeply silly. Chicklet with $2. Thank you. Would you cover the X-Men 97 controversy? Maybe. Didn't that go away? Didn't people stop complaining about that after the show was good and they realized they couldn't criticize it without seeming like a killjoy? I haven't actually watched X-Men 97 yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I've heard a lot of good things. But I am aware that apparently people have stopped complaining about it because it's too popular to attack. That's sort of the strength of some of these right-wing media channels. They'll attack anything that's not perceived as good and use it to advance their agenda. That's why Ghostbusters 2016 was like such a valuable tool for them, because it was not a great movie. And people were like, because it's pushing an agenda. It's like, nah, it's just not very well written or anything. It just did not come together well as a movie. Not because of an agenda. Also, someone mentioned Pillar of Garbage covered it. Go watch Pillar of Garbage's videos on it. They're very good. And I look forward to X-Men 97 when I get a chance to. Maybe it'll spark something in me wanting to cover it. So we haven't even gotten to the introduction yet. This is here's a great example of what a bad writer Ben Shapiro is. We are addicted to television as a constant source of information, entertainment, a break from our dreary workdays, an escape. Two of these are exactly the same. A break from our dreary workdays and an escape are exactly the same. I don't know why you'd put them both in a list. Entertainment is arguably connected to those two things as well. I love the idea of being addicted to a source of information. It's like, oh, I'm addicted to being informed in the world. It's like saying I'm addicted to books. And if you want to see how even more full of crap he is, here he is quoting from a Scientific American article. In short, scientists conclude that TV does seem to meet the criteria for substance dependence. Do they, though? What would happen if I looked up that article and, perhaps maybe, just maybe, I did that? Let me see if I can center this a little bit. And maybe, even though TV does seem to meet the criteria for substance dependence, not all researchers would go so far as to call TV addictive. Oh, it's almost like the sentence was directly arguing against the point Ben is trying to make. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that he used a sentence that is the complete opposite of how he was trying to present it? But, yeah, that's like what he does, doesn't he? Just sort of takes things out of context and twists it to mean something else. Also, this is just a random article from Scientific American. TV is not addictive. It just is not listed as an addictive behavior. In fact, for those who don't know about addiction, there are very few behavioral addictions. The only one I'm aware of that's in the DSM is gambling. Gambling is listed as an addiction and is treated that way. Other addictions are based on substances, drugs and various other forms of narcotics because they create a chemical addiction. Behavioral addictions are much tougher to classify as addictions simply because, they're driven by sort of an impulse rather than a chemical imbalance. Yeah, some QKR anarchist mentions, what about food? It's like, yeah, you could call eating food an addiction because we have to do it every day, don't we? Addiction also has to have some sort of self-destructive element to it as well. A lot of weird. Someone said, isn't sex addiction also in the DSM? I'm pretty sure it's not, actually. Last I checked, it wasn't. It hasn't come out. When was the last DSM? Was it 2021 or something? It's been a while. Anyway, I had to research a lot of this for a video that ended up not coming out about supposed porn addiction. That isn't to say people don't have bad relationships with pornography. There are people who have very destructive relationships with pornography, but behaviors can also often be difficult to disentangle from other circumstances. Like someone who's suffering from depression may engage in certain types of behaviors that appear addictive, but are actually reflective of that sort of depressive state more so than the actual behavior. That's why it's very different. It's very different. Addiction, like some people are talking about, is a very specific thing someone has to be diagnosed with, and it's very intensely argued within the academic literature. Again, it's something I haven't looked into in a couple of years, but it's very interesting. Anyway, I wonder if anyway. Sorry. I was just remembering that video I never uploaded, and I think it's still up for patrons or something. Become a patron if you want to see a Jose video that never got put online. It's from like years ago though, so it's not very good. That's why I didn't put it online. And I don't remember. I think I put it up for patrons. Okay, let's read this excerpt. During the 1960s, artists and creators went out of their way to shock the American middle class in order to forward their liberal agenda: feminism, gay rights, racial preferences, bigger government. When the smoke cleared, however, the artists had largely gotten what they wanted. With their help, the civil rights movement had achieved its major goals. This presented a problem for television liberals. How could they continue to rebel against the status quo if there was nothing left to rebel against? Its continuing rebellion against bourgeois mentality and taste is the sign of a vestigial avant-garde impulse that has become detached from any serious moral purpose. This is just, this is peak Ben Shapiro right here. there is nothing left for the left to fight for. We won everything, don't you know? That the left won all this arguing, all this struggle. It's for nothing. We don't have any causes anymore. I think he like sort of makes a joke that, oh, what does the left argue about these days? Trans fats? I don't know. In 2011, can we think of anything? Maybe a war in Iraq. It's pretty bad. I remind you, he mentions gay rights here. Gay men couldn't marry or gay women. No gay people could get married in the US in 2011. It was still years away. Growing income inequality, climate change, trans rights were still like on the horizon. There's so many things the left has to fight for. So many. The idea that the left got everything it wanted in 1970, I think reveals how far right Ben is. He doesn't want to go back to like the conservatism of the 90s. He wants like the 1960s. That's how backwards he is. Mithril, thank you for the 10 pounds. Ben seems to be somewhat behind the times. I haven't heard the phrase the boob tube for 2 or 3 decades. Yeah, that's something that's very, very common. He is often behind the times, and he'll make references to things that are just so fashionably out of date. There's one point in this book where he talks about the cosmic debate between Marianne and Ginger. Does anyone know what that means? I know what it means because I have an understanding of Gilligan's Island, but the average person has no idea about Ginger versus Marianne. They were the 2 women who were on the island with Gilligan and the skipper, and the argument was which was like the more attractive one. It's not just old; it's a very specific kind of old debate. Just so silly, and so out of touch. How are you like supposedly speaking to a young generation when making these kind of references? It reminds me of when I hear Steven Crowder talking about, oh God, now it completely slips my mind. He was trying to like represent like, oh, we all agree this actress is all beautiful. And it was someone from like the 1960s. It was like Audrey Hepburn or something. And yes, Audrey Hepburn is very beautiful. It's also not a reference I think anyone would make unless they were like 60 years old. And I think a lot of these people very much internalized talking points they probably got from their parents. I know in this book, Ben mentions how his dad really helped keep him on the up and straight and narrow. And he had to go around his parents to watch TV. He had to break the rules to watch The Simpsons. And it was, yeah. It definitely wasn't Marilyn Monroe, although that seems like something he would have mentioned. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Every television writer still wants to be Norman Lear. The problem is obvious. Lear had Nixon, Watergate, Vietnam, and racism. Today's writers have trans fats. I think I can think of a little more than trans fats that are a problem in the world today. Doesn't everyone do? Someone criticized me for getting involved with the culture war. I think you're misunderstanding my work. I am not trying to do the culture war so much as pointing out how the critics of the culture war are full of crap. I'm not really, I don't think you can really point to my channel as pushing a specific, well, I guess a general left-wing idea. But I've never tried to say I was anything more than a YouTube person. Also, someone asking if I'm conservative. I am not. It's not in any way, shape, or form right conservative. Unless you're way to the left of me, I guess. And yeah, this stream is me just having a bit of fun. The next video is going to be better. All right, someone calling me the wokerati. Thank you, I guess. All right, next. If they could merge lowbrow entertainment with liberal political messaging, they could have the best of both worlds, ratings and propaganda. This is just... Ben is going to be talking about a very specific moment in TV history that I happen to be researching for my All in the Family video. So this is going to get super interesting. And I love talking about certain facts he omits. Just, it's going to get good. But this idea that lowbrow entertainment was infused with liberal political messaging, I think that really reveals, like, he talks about the left having been elitist. I don't think TV shows are necessarily lowbrow. I don't think sitcoms, I mean, when people call them lowbrow, I see that as more of an elitist thing to say. Um, Specifically when it comes to, I don't know, the show I covered, All in the Family, is something truly revolutionary in the space, and it's a type of satire. It really is art. And then to call it lowbrow is to basically say you don't think television comedies or sitcoms could ever possibly be more than just disposable, easily digested laughs that are nothing special. Um, I don't know. Marrowcat with a great point. Shakespeare is lowbrow. Shakespeare had many jokes and things in his comedy that were about, bodily functions and various vulgar things that were designed to get a laugh out of people because he was playing to a wide audience. And he also realized that everyone kind of laughs at those jokes for a reason. They're funny. No one would ever accuse Shakespeare of being lowbrow. Um, but yeah, Ben is he's a bit of a snob. Also, he's obviously talking about like how he's the forgotten middle, the rural folks, and like Birmingham, Alabama. He'll randomly say, and it's like, Ben, you're from California. Your family grew up in Hollywood. You're not one of those people, and the fact that you think you are, um, that's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Uh, okay, this was funny. The question, therefore, is not whether the portrayals are realistic, but whether that realism is broadly representative of the world at large. The idea that realism needs to be common is a huge problem here. And he rails against realism being in TV shows because it'll often depict things that are defended as being realistic when he'll criticize them because they're not common. But then he'll turn around and say that by presenting them, they're trying to create the impression that they are common. I don't think anyone is trying to argue that anything that is unusual is trying to be normalized. In some cases, yes. There are examples of one-off shows. For instance, to mention All in the Family again. There's like an episode where, there's a gay person who isn't stereotypically gay. And the idea is like, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Not all gay people act the same way, which is true. That's just true. It's not something that will come up very often if you're living in the 1970s, because a lot of people were still closeted. And you could argue that's trying to normalize the idea that gay people should be able to exist in the world and not be expected to fit a certain stereotype. That's fine. I think that's a type of, I guess you could call it an activism in TV if you want to be very harsh about it. But the rest of the time, it's usually something different. It's still acknowledging it's not common, and most other things are also not common, but still realistic. And Ben sort of arguing that this isn't realism, or that realism should instead be more common, is silly. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that made sense. This is the problem with working unscripted. I feel like I would like to say things more clearly. If I was writing the script, I'd look at that sentence and say like, I want to get another go at that, and just write it over again. um, I'll say this word very carefully. Hollywood has jiggered the market to meet its own ends and has made America more liberal in the process. That's just him restating what I said earlier. He's trying to argue that TV just decided one day to go more liberal and is now trying to... and now people have been brainwashed, essentially, by television. Hollywood has, in fact, defined the market to which it caters, young urban audiences, and then convinced advertisers on Madison Avenue that these audiences are worth more than other audiences. This is exactly backwards, right? This is exactly backwards. It's not that advertisers don't care about who they were targeting. It's not like television companies had to go like, hey, advertisers, you don't want the old folks. You want to go for the hip, you new young audience. That's who you really want. And advertisers are like, well, I guess so. I guess that is who we want. Advertisers always want younger audiences. They want younger audiences because it's a lot easier to convince someone to start drinking Coke at the age of like 15 than someone at 65. And someone you convince at 15 will drink Coke for the rest of their lives. It's a long-term strategy. And just wow, wow. Um, it's just not true. Also, thank you, Matthew Egley, for the $50. Wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You're doing a great job, pal. That's very kind of you to say. Can I click this heart here? I should be clicking hearts on all of these super chats. I apologize to anyone who super chatted me before and I didn't heart your message. That was truly heartless of me. Oof. Bad pun there, right? And yeah, someone pointed out young people have a more disposable income too. There's another thing that's incredibly important to talk about right here. I don't know if I highlighted something about this later on, but anyway, I'll talk about it now. The big change of demographic advertising, he points it out as being in the 1950s when ABC started to go for a younger audience. That was actually just because ABC was a newer network and the younger audience was the one they thought was available. It was really the 1960s where they started targeting younger demographics on other channels, specifically because the baby boomers were getting older. That was one of the largest emerging demographics. If you know anything about population distributions, the baby boom represents a huge, huge chunk of the population. And in the 1960s, that generation was turning 20 years old. So advertisers were looking at that and go like, this is an emerging audience. We need to target them now, right away. That's why there was a greater emphasis on younger audiences in the 1960s. It wasn't because Hollywood just decided we need to be liberal and the young people are liberal. It was more like the young people were liberal and there were a lot of them with money, and they wanted that money. To present it as like left-wing Hollywood just wanted to spread their values and indoctrinate people is just completely ahistorical and clearly driven by an agenda. There's actually an interview I want to highlight that. I don't know if we'll get that far in the book because it's pretty long. This is page what? Oh, I don't even know. It doesn't show up on here, does it? Oh, no, wait, there it is. 32 of 491 PDF pages, so obviously nothing. We're not going to go through the whole book, obviously, but I hope we can at least get to the part where we talk about the TV shows. I like this part here. He's talking about Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. In large part, he, being Putnam, blames television, which we are increasingly watching alone rather than with family. Dependence on television for entertainment is not merely a significant predictor of civic disengagement, Putnam writes. It is the single most consistent predictor that I have discovered. Now, oh, Maggie Mayfish is in the chat. Hello, Maggie. I like your weird side eyes. We're talking about TV and Ben Shapiro. It's pretty wild. Anyway, Robert Putnam is someone I had to research in the past. He is like gone on the record so many times, specifically talking about Bowling Alone and how it's misrepresented by conservatives. When he in this sentence right here, when he talks about predictor, he's not saying that television is causal. He's just saying that if you look at someone's habits with watching television, it reflects civic disengagement. This is not the same thing as one causes the other. Okay, like it's such a fundamental misreading of this. And he's just deliberately distorting this, like everyone distorts Putnam's work. It's often used by people to say that diversity is what's breaking down like civil cohesion. And I don't know. I think this research that reflects like growing feelings of disconnect people have with their society is not an argument. Is not an argument for conservative values that they think it is. And it's just kind of frustrating to read this over and over, and the same mistake being made repeatedly. To say that TV is a predictor of civic disengagement, that's kind of like saying sweat is a predictor of sunburn. That is to say, they will correlate very highly. Someone who is sweating is more likely to get a sunburn, but sweat is not causal of that sunburn. It's a confounding factor, or it's a confounding a correlate. It correlates with it. That's the word I'm trying to get at here. So watching television may correlate with civic disengagement and might be a predictor of it, but it's not necessarily a cause of civic disengagement. The same way sweat does not cause a sunburn. It just means if you're out in the sun, you're probably going to sweat. More likely than not being in the sun. And obviously being in the sun is more likely to create a sunburn. So this is like, a lot of bad understanding of science here. Sure. Let's keep moving, because this is a great book. This was funny. In their maniacal quest to push the envelope for status and reward, everyone looks for the next Friends, not the next Cosby Show. Everyone seeks out the next Will and Grace, not the next Everybody Loves Raymond. Everyone wants to do an updated All in the Family. Nobody wants to do an updated Waltons. That's just not true. First of all, I think any show would love to be the next Cosby Show, which was one of the most watched shows in America. The fact that people are more likely to want to be like Friends than the Cosby Show in 2011 is because Friends is a more recent show. Obviously, no one wants to be the Cosby Show because Bill Cosby is a rapist. I should clarify that. People would love to be a predominantly black family sitcom that was massively popular, not be led by a horrible rapist. Just let's be clear. Everyone wants to be the next Will and Grace, and not the next Everybody Loves Raymond is just not true. Like, Everybody Loves Raymond. That was a massively popular show that made a lot of money. And the reason people would rather be All in the Family more than the Waltons, that makes sense, because Waltons was pretty old-fashioned when it came out in the 1970s, and All in the Family was a much more popular show and culturally more significant. I'll give Ben that one. But these are just like wild comparisons. And again, it's not really like if he had had modern examples and he's like, look at these modern TV shows and how they're so much more like this and not like this. I think I could find a couple of shows that are more like Everybody Loves Raymond than Will and Grace, to be perfectly honest. But again, more broad, sweeping generalizations. But I like this part here. The liberals are simply more empathetic, creative, and talented than their right-wing counterparts. He doesn't believe this is true, obviously. This argument is obviously disgustingly discriminatory. Few Hollywoodites admit this sort of xenophobia openly. That could be grounds for a lawsuit, but it exists in precisely the way that racism dominated American companies during the Jim Crow era. That's right, folks. When conservatives don't get jobs in Hollywood, it's basically Jim Crow. It's Jim Crow. It's also xenophobia, which, how is it xenophobia again? Like, xenophobia refers to like discrimination against people from another country. But all right. Like, use better words. There's lots of words. Use better ones. But I just love the comparison to Jim Crow. It's like, yeah, truly Hollywood conservatives. Here we go. Conservatives who come out of the closet in Hollywood often experience worse discrimination than gays who come out of the closet in society more broadly. They lose friends, they lose contacts. Most importantly, they lose jobs. Yes, in 2011, it was so much easier to be gay. Certainly, you weren't a victim of a hate crime. People weren't being like attacked in the streets for being gay the way they were for being a Hollywood conservatives. How many people were beaten to death for being a Hollywood conservative? Did that like ever happen in history? Probably not. Probably not. Again, this is 2011, and you still couldn't get legally married if you were gay. That's just interesting, though. But man, just the victimhood dripping off of this is so. Him not selling that script, I feel like really broke his brain, and not getting that job. But hey, now he gets to be a victim for the rest of his life. Yeah, I like this when he's talking about left-wing causes. They're universally anti-traditional values, pro-government intervention, and anti-war. I mean, you got us with that last one. You're really, really taking the left for being anti-war. Because I love how he puts that next to anti-traditional values and pro-government intervention, which I can see how a conservative would argue the opposite. But is he also saying conservatives are pro-war? Kind of a tell there. I mean, he obviously is. Look what he's saying right now about what's happening in Gaza. He's cheerleading that on like nobody's business. It's actually pretty grotesque, the stuff he posts on Twitter about that pretty much every day. If Israel says anything about its mass slaughter of people, you can rest assured Ben Shapiro will not just excuse it. He'll cheer it on and present it as a just and moral thing to do. Pretty grotesque guy, but there you go. I'm glad he could clarify that the left is the ones who hate war, and I guess he loves it, right? Here's a fun line that just is not true. We don't generally criticize McDonald's for providing Big Macs, even if they're unhealthy. McDonald's gets criticized all the time for being unhealthy. We don't make a big, I guess, public statement on it because we just know that. Everyone knows McDonald's isn't healthy. It's just a fact. If he's like upset that we aren't going out of our way to criticize them, why is there some sort of double standard for liberal programming in Hollywood? Oof. Okay. Oh yeah, Super Size Me was out several years before then, wasn't it? But again, everyone knows that McDonald's isn't healthy. Let's go past some of this. Is there like a better way? Yeah, I'm going to use my keyboard here. Ooh, here we go. This sort of supports what I was saying earlier. If ABC couldn't get older rural viewers for its programs, it would tell advertisers that its young urban viewers were worth more in the grand scheme of things, with or without the data to prove it. We began programming for the young families of America, Goldenson later wrote, and in doing so revolutionized television. We simply had no other choice. This philosophy bore the obsession with the 18 to 49 crowd, and in catering to that crowd, television's manic obsession with sex and violence was born too. This is in the mid-1950s. Do you remember how sex and violence was everywhere in the mid-1950s? Also, the idea that ABC, the third most popular network behind CBS and NBC, was somehow changing the way advertisers thought about demographics and whatever is pretty wild. They had the least amount of power and influence. If CBS had done that, maybe they would have taken more notice. But no, advertisers, as I said earlier, were driving the push towards a younger demographic. Because again, the baby boomers were growing up, and this was something that happened later on. ABC was ahead of the curve in going after that younger audience, but that was also a product of the fact that the older audiences were so deeply entrenched with the other networks. ABC needed to find viewers somewhere, and that was like the people who were just showing up. It isn't them trying to push their liberal agenda. And here's Ben doing something. This is just kind of messed up. When he's talking about the people, like the creative people who are influencing this, he writes, Jewish kids who had found their way on the New York entertainment scene, which meant typically that their parents had been poor, often socialist. And the early years of televisions were replete with liberal Jews. This is one of those things where I wonder if Ben understands what certain elements of his audience are hearing when he says this. When he talks about like specifically left-wing Jewish people, who later in the book he'll say aren't really Jewish, or at least from his perspective, are behind this, he's feeding into an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. I hope that's clear to everyone here. And it's deeply troubling. I don't think he's trying to do this. Like, I don't think he's going like, I hope everyone blames the Jews for this. But when he specifically goes out of his way to highlight Jewish creatives as being behind all of this, he does clarify later on, but still, it's not good. It's not good. The heavy concentration of leftist Jews in early television doesn't spring from some concerted conspiracy. It springs from the fact that artists are generally alienated from society. As we've mentioned, and assimilated Jews were alienated from both their religious heritage, making them liberal, and the broader society. So that's so nefarious because he's trying to present it's like it's not a conspiracy of like Jewish people trying to take over, because by the way, these aren't really Jewish people, and also they're alienated, so they know what it's like to be discriminated against, and that's what artists are like. Yeah, he's still presenting it as like a group of people of specifically driving all of this. To only talk about specifically the Jewish creative people in television, ignoring all the non-Jewish creative people, is such a weird thing to do. Even talking about something like All in the Family, which again, I've done some research on recently. Yes, Norman Lear was driving that show, and a lot of the writers on the show were Jewish. That is true. But to say that, for instance, Carol O'Connor, uh, and being a Christian didn't have enormous influence on that character and that series, is to be missing one of like the most important parts of what made it what it was. Um, just really, really messed up stuff. But again, I just wonder how aware Ben is of what he's writing sometimes. It's He needs to take greater care with his words and maybe think less ridiculous things. Um, Here we go. The transition to tape television actually led the way to greater television liberalism. Before the transition, network censors, whose job it was to ensure that advertisers didn't freak out over broadcast material, had to be wary of anything that could offend the audience. Their motto was, if in doubt, lose it. That meant more conservative values on television. In tape television, by contrast, everything was pre-planned. That meant the programmers could push the envelope more and more often, and they took full advantage, bugging the network censors and generally daring them to wield the heavy hand of censorship. That's kind of a wild thing to say, that greater artistic freedom might necessitate some form of censorship, as if this is like some kind of balancing act. Also, he mentions tape television. He means recorded, because they actually recorded things on film. One of the advents of All in the Family was being the first sitcom to use tape. They only used tape previously for live shows. And they used film for everything else that was recorded. Anyway, this is just kind of ridiculous, though, and the idea that they could push the boundaries more often. It's a very pro-censorship take, though, isn't it? And we'll see that a lot. He seems to like the idea of censorship when it comes to values he disagrees with. Then again, I don't think he was pretending to be a free speech absolutist the way so many on the right do these days, which again is also a farce. But anyway, this is just a funny line. Profit first regime was on its last legs in television. This was in the 1960s, the mid 1960s, when they stopped caring about making money. They were about, it's no longer about making the money anymore. At least not it's not top of the list of priorities. No, TV is, it's about making money. It always has been and continues to be primarily about making money. It's very funny, and like the stuff he'll start inventing in his mind where they like go, we don't care about audiences. We just want to send our liberal message. Thank you, Roman Omen, for the super chat. Just catching your stream. Thank you. Your videos help me detox out of my bankrupt conservative mindset. Much love. Very happy to hear that. I hope you're doing well and you continue your path of sobriety. Let's go to the next part. What was the next part? There's another one. He mentioned Carl Reiner as one of those like scary Jewish people who's like destroying stuff. He was running the Dick Van Dyke Show, which Ben Shapiro will call the perfect sitcom, which is weird. Like, he'll later say that Carl Reiner was later freed for his like gross liberal tendencies in the 1970s, but apparently he also created the greatest show of all time. It's wholly inconsistent and bizarre. And yes, Carl Reiner did take greater chances in the 1970s, but doesn't that say something about what an artist is trying to do and the constraints that are put on them? And you'd think if you liked an artist's work, wouldn't you want them to be able to express themselves freely without being censored? Isn't that something you would support? Are you really a fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show if you can then say, I wish Carl Reiner didn't let all of his liberal values come out in his show or whatever? Yeah. So I'm saying he's a fake fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show. That's what I'm saying right now. Take that, Ben Shapiro. The merger between business and creative elements marked the beginning of the end of profit-only television and the beginning of social goal-oriented TV. Where is social goal-oriented TV? I'd like to see that. No longer would television be separated into lowbrow entertainment geared toward profit and highbrow programming geared towards political propagandizing. Now the two would be combined into a form of lowbrow politics that would infiltrate American society from top to bottom. Why? Wild stuff here. So he argues earlier, and I didn't really pull a quote from this bit, but that so initially there was a push from the government for TV to be more enriching That is to say, to educate people. And so we got like shows that were a little more, as Ben would call them, highbrow. I would say they're more like informational pieces. And they weren't very popular. And the idea that the popular shows were lowbrow and unsophisticated. Again, some elitism here from Ben. And the idea that this is now social goal-oriented TV, that primarily the networks always wanted to push this stuff. Or at least the new wave of ownership. Originally, they were all conservative businessmen, but now they're all left-leaning, apparently. Um, but he's not really evidencing any of this, as we see. We'll get a better example of this as we move further along. Here we go. The Smothers Brothers opened the eyes of the management. Young audiences, youth audiences could bring in huge numbers. And Paley saw the light. That was the president of CBS. Paley elevated Robert Wood to the network presidencies. Now, for those who don't know, the Smothers Brothers were they were a comedy duo. There were two brothers. They had a lot of like, maybe I can find a clip of them while I'm talking about this. Wouldn't that be nice to look at instead of just some text? Let me do that. Actually, when I get hit with a copyright claim, let's just get a picture of them. There we go. They're the Smothers Brothers. So these two guys had this, it was a sort of a variety show. They would have like comedy skits and sketches, and then they'd have musical performances. They'd have stand-up comedians. You can actually see a young George Carlin on their show. You can see the Doors perform. And it was really popular. They would have like references to doing marijuana. They were a pretty big deal. Because they spoke to a young audience, and they were highly unusual because CBS at the time, that's the network they were on, was traditionally going for an older audience. And this, the Smothers Brothers were sort of breaking that trend. And this is, I guess Ben's saying this is like the liberals who infiltrated and are now trying to push these Smothers Brothers upon us. The show was canceled. It was a very highly rated show. It was in the top 15. And its third season, it was canceled by Robert Wood, who Paley elevated to network presidency. So if this was the networks trying to push their leftist agendas, why did they cancel it? The Smothers Brothers actually sued CBS for like $700,000, and they won because CBS lied about why they canceled it. They said something about like, oh, they were supposed to deliver a tape to us, and they didn't. They did deliver the tape. They had a record of it. It's just, how can you say that CBS is pushing a liberal agenda if their like vanguard of liberal entertainment was canceled? Robert Wood, by the way, was a very conservative guy. He put on a lot of shows that were more sensitive to the left, but he was a conservative guy, according to the books I've read on it anyway. I don't know what Ben's reading. Probably nothing. But anyway. This did happen later, though. Wood was eager to apply his sensibility to programming. Wood wanted relevant stuff. Anyway, he proposed that CBS dump its entire rural schedule, all the successful programs like Gomer Pyle, Petticoat Junction, the Beverly Hillbillies, and instead slot in hipper, more urban programming targeting younger audiences. First off, Petticoat Junction specifically was doing very poorly in the ratings. That's why it got canceled. Don't pretend it was like, I mean, it was part of the rural purge, as it's called, but it wasn't canceled because it wasn't a popular show. The Beverly Hillbillies and Gomer Pyle were popular, but the problem was they were both declining in the ratings, and they skewed old, and they were getting increasingly expensive. He didn't mention, for instance, that Wood also canceled the Ed Sullivan Show and the Red Skelton Show, variety shows that also appealed to an older audience, but were getting very, very expensive to produce. This wasn't just like, we need to go for our liberal programming and force it down people's throats like Ben is trying to present here. This is the fact that it was an aging audience, and these shows were getting more expensive, and the ratings were going down. There are a lot of factors why these shows got canceled. But again, Ben's not really interested in reality. CBS was moving away from programming for America and moving toward programming for particular Americans under the direction of Bob Wood. This is another thing he gets wrong. So he argues that people started looking at this demographic data and stopped creating programming for the whole family, and instead of targeting different audiences like older audiences and younger audiences, for men, women, and all that stuff. Demographic data was getting more complicated and more sophisticated at this time, so they were getting more breakdowns. But it wasn't like the network said, okay, we need to like split up these audiences and go after them one at a time. It was more like they realized these audiences, they were trying to program for the whole audience, and they realized, according to this data, audiences were not all watching the same thing. And young people were not, and old people were not all gathering around the TV together to watch shows. That's just not how people were acting. Um, that was reflected in the data. Networks realized they had to adjust. That's what happened. Um, Again, he's trying to present this as some sort of top-down move that the networks were making a nefarious play. It's because they wanted to manipulate all of this. And this is now they're talking about All in the Family. Paley hated the show, but Silverman, Dan, and backed it. And they won. Thing is, All in the Family was sent out to die, basically. For those who don't know about its premiere, it came out in January of 1971. And they put it on at 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Its lead-in was Hee Haw. So people went from watching Hee Haw, which is like a rural-themed variety show. It's like a redneck version of Laugh-In, I guess. And then they would watch All in the Family, which was, first off, like before it aired, they put up like a warning saying like, there's some like salty language here. You better watch out. This is for mature audiences. You may not want to watch this. They did so much to really undercut All in the Family's premiere. The fact that it succeeded at all is almost a minor miracle, and it wasn't because all the people in the network loved it. It was mostly Robert Wood, actually. But anyway. Carl Reiner now fully able to express his liberal viewpoints. That's what I mentioned earlier. CBS's Urban Renewal Project paid huge dividends. They dominated the ratings for the next 5 years. That seems important, right? Right? Isn't it important to mention that people actually did like this stuff? They watched it. They watched it a lot. All in the Family was the most popular show in America for 5 years in a row. And it sort of should be a reflection of people's sensibilities and that people wanted to see this. Ben saying it was like somehow orchestrated and manipulated by the networks. No, they just saw a major trend and that it was coming. One of the interesting things about All in the Family too is it wasn't just a hit with younger audiences. Older audiences loved it too. You don't become the number one show in America by appealing to younger audiences alone. Ironically, it was a show that families watched together. Sort of flies in the face of Ben's whole theory here, doesn't it? Here's a good one. With All in the Family, Lear wanted to use Archie Bunker as a repository for and caricature of all right-wing views, then mock them. His other shows followed the same leftist pattern. No, actually. Archie Bunker is modeled off of Norman Lear's father. We'll get more into this later on, but he was actually trying to sort of sympathize and understand Archie Bunker. Laugh at him, yes. But also, there was a lot of critique of the left as well. It seems like Ben has completely missed out on the satire that was directed at the left. It wasn't even, well, not to say that it was like, it was both sides. It definitely had a left-wing bias. I would say that is definitely true of All in the Family. But to say that it didn't have any sort of critical things to say towards the left is just not true. I'll have more to say about that later. I like this. By 1976, the American people were tiring of the strident and cynical liberal commentary of Norman Lear. Were they, though? Were they? That's a common talking point. But if you actually look at the ratings... let's look at this. Here we go. Let's look at these ratings. 1976, Happy Days was number 1. That's sort of like presented as like when Norman Lear's stuff started to fall. 'Cause All in the Family was 12th. Ooh, the end of the line, right? Except next season it was back to 4th. So yeah. You can also see various shows I've clicked on here for various reasons. Anyway, and it would be 9th in its last season. You can see the Jeffersons up there. That was another Norman Lear show. And yeah. Oh, One Day at a Time. That was 10th. Soap was 13th. That was very political in that it had a gay character. But To say that Norman Lear shows were like no longer of interest to people in 1976 is just a lie. Um, just an absolute lie. Definitely, there was like a return of more sort of, and there were a lot of confounding factors there. The reason All in the Family fell down to 12th is because it changed its time like 5 times in the season or something. No, it was just 3 times, but still, it jumped around time slots a lot, which I think shook off a lot of viewers. And that's also the time the family viewing hour came into effect. For those who aren't aware, the family viewing hour is when they instituted a rule that between 8 and 9 p.m. you couldn't have shows that weren't family friendly. Family friendly. It was self-imposed by the networks, but it was in part strongly suggested by the FCC. And it's not that people grew tired of it. It's more that all these shows suddenly had their either had to change themselves by being rewritten or were moved to time slots where it's tougher for them to get eyeballs on them. So it's not just that people got lost interest. It's the schedules got shaken up, and we suddenly had this weird new regulation on TV. I should say, like a quasi-regulation. I'm gonna need a sip. Let's see if I can do this quietly. To drink some water here. Okay. This quote here I like because it's just an example of how Ben just lies. Here it is. ABC was basically working class. This is a quote he's reading from. ABC was basically working class, quite urban. By urban, I just mean big city. Ben clarifies here. By urban, Silverman also meant young. He literally says, I just mean big city. But Ben tells us, oh, he also means that. If he just means big city, don't infer additional information without, like, if he had brought in some like data to back this up or some other statement the guy had previously made, anything to support this additional context he's given us, then okay. But he just kind of says it flat out. It's like he means other things as well. He does this later on in the book in a way that is really, really grotesque. I don't know if I'm going to get that far, but he basically says when they talk about the shift in advertisers, the focus towards a younger demographic, someone from the network is like, yeah, we did it for money. It was all about money for us. Then Ben says, it wasn't just about money. It's like, why interview people if you're just going to lie about what they say? If you could get them to admit something different, then cool, interesting. But he's not. He's just asking them questions and then ignoring their answers. Pretty dirty, actually. I think I have to... Here we go. This is a fun one. Murphy Brown, which, as Dan Quayle famously pointed out, stood in favor of liberal social policies, including championing the virtue of single motherhood. This was something I didn't really talk about in my Murphy Brown video that much. Well, I do mention it in passing, but Dan Quayle actually had never seen Murphy Brown when he referenced it as like destroying America. Ben will later describe how the rise of single motherhood was caused by Murphy Brown, which is just a wild thing to say. It's like women are like, I was thinking of getting married before having a kid, but then I saw Murphy Brown do it, so I'm gonna have a kid now without getting married. And that's dramatically overstating the power of television, I think. It's what makes this book kind of funny sometimes. Okay. Here we go. They're right, of course. When it comes to the need to know people, Hollywood's no different from any other business. That's true. People get jobs by knowing somebody who knows somebody, by calling in favors, by flipping through the Rolodex. The difference is that the television industry is so dominated by liberals that unless you have a Rolodex filled with liberals, your chances of breaking it in are relatively slim. Now think for a moment. Just think. Are there any other industries that are dominated by other types of political biases? Or is it just Hollywood? Just Hollywood, where it's specifically liberals who dominate things and other industries don't have political tendencies. I think this is also where Ben falls down big time, because you could point to like the financial industry and how it's dominated by conservatives. And I don't think they're trying to keep liberal people out because of like political biases. It's like, oh, you voted for so-and-so, we're not going to let you join this hedge fund. I think people just gravitate towards certain industries and certain political values that reflect them, you know? Also, someone pointed out a Rolodex. Yeah, way to date yourself, as if anyone uses a Rolodex, even in 2011. Here we go. Uh, Here's a statement I liked. This is from an interview with Mark Harris, who is Entertainment Weekly former executive editor. Take, for instance, The Middle, ABC's beautifully written and acted, under-heralded family sitcom, and a show that, to admit my own bias, I expected to hate, since many of the political views of its star, Patricia Heaton, are about 8,000 light years to my right. I'm not sure exactly how Heaton and the show's creators, veterans of the left populist 90s classic Roseanne, found common ground, but what they've come up with has an unmistakable ideological, left-leaning undercurrent all its own. That's pretty nice, right? Isn't that a nice thing he just said? He overcame his biases and admitted conservatives can create good things. Here's a fun response from Ben. Harris's comment betrayed a shocking lack of knowledge about how the industry works. The actors generally don't write the shows, so Heaton wouldn't be determining content. Wrong. Not that actors don't write shows. Some of them do. But actors, particularly the star of the show, can have an enormous impact on the content of the show. The number of times famous actors have influenced the content of their shows. Numerous examples. And Patricia Heaton had enough sway and pull in the industry, coming off of Everybody Loves Raymond, to absolutely demand certain things be in the middle. What she did or didn't do, I have no idea. I haven't researched that show. But to say that she wouldn't have been listened to or wouldn't have had any influence and she would just read what the writers gave her. Wow. No. Wrong, Ben. You talk about not knowing how the industry works. I think Ben has no idea how the industry works here. Especially, I don't know, again, let's talk about All in the Family. Carol O'Connor famously fought over so many scripts. He would rewrite lines and ad-lib things all the time. He would insist on not performing certain things. They had to bring in lawyers at one point to get him to perform one of the episodes. It was wild. He walked off the show for several episodes. Actors absolutely have an impact on the shows, and that's a very extreme take. Most people weren't like O'Connor. Most people just kind of go along with stuff. But if you're a star of a show, you have a lot of influence over what that show is going to put on the screen, because ultimately you can walk and then the show is finished because you're the star. But actors use their influence in a variety of ways. I'm going to read this, but I think I have to cough first. Or don't. I mean, that's I feel like I have to cough, but I don't know if I can cough right now. I'm just going to read the next bit, and hopefully I don't cough while reading it. While he was pleasantly surprised to find that The Middle skewed liberal on issues like gay rights and the economy, his initial expectation that any show with Patricia Heaton had to be some sort of right-wing diatribe, and that by extension it had to be terrible. Unfortunately, this is the logic of far too many in the industry who assume that just because someone voted for Bush or McCain that their work must be correspondingly conservative and therefore awful. The logic is not only flawed, it's repulsive. So, when liberal equals good and conservative equals bad, when you're judged more based on its politics rather than its quality, quality falls by the wayside. First, let's look at the irony of that last statement. Ben is constantly looking at the politics of something and ignoring its quality. He emphasizes politics all throughout this book. And also, this statement I read from Harris is so nice. It's so positive. He's talking about how much he liked The Middle. And how the problem was him. The idea that it would have been, he didn't even think that it would be bad so much as it was, he would have personally not liked it. It's the difference between saying, there's a lot of shows I don't like. I wouldn't label them necessarily as bad. I might label some of them as bad. But just because I don't like something, or even if I hate it, I don't think I can label it as something as good or bad. But for Ben, the idea of criticism being some sort of objective stamp, I think reflects his very specific view of what criticism is as some sort of objective measure of quality, when it's really just someone's subjective take on something. Also, yeah, someone mentioned this is the premise of his book, is judging something by its politics. What does it matter? He'll say a lot of these shows where he criticizes their politics are good too. So he's almost consistent there, but he's emphasizing the politics here for a reason. Here's a fun quote about Norman Lear. Lear was fighting something, and Lear won. The 1960s are over. What was Lear fighting in the 1960s? All in the Family debuted in 1971. In the 1960s, Norman Lear had written a few movies, I should say. And the idea that all the fights, this is again goes back to that idea Ben was trying to push earlier, the left doesn't have anything left to fight for. They're just flailing around wildly to try and outrage people because there's just nothing left to fight for. And here's Ben describing TV. Their main job is to sell products so that advertisers will pay them enormous sums of cash. Yeah. God, I feel like I'd be repeating myself at this point, so let's move along. We're going back to the 1960s and early 1970s, everyone. Is everyone enjoying this trip down TV history lane? Actually, maybe we can move on, because I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself with some of this stuff. I highlighted a lot of things, didn't I? Here's the bottom line from Ben Shapiro. Television reflects those who create it and transforms everybody else. Does it, though? Does it, though? That's an interesting question, though. How does TV... He doesn't provide any evidence of TV's transformational power, except for the fact that people like liberal stuff more so than conservative stuff, and he thinks that's a product of brainwashing. But he just has this idea that it's... television is some sort of mass brainwashing tool, when I don't know, it's really widely debated the effect TV has on people, like how it does or does not change us. Looking at All in the Family again, there's actually a lot of research was done on that show, like a lot of scientific studies, because it was massively popular. So all these social scientists stood up and said, like, let's measure various things about the audience. And the overwhelming consensus on what was found was that they don't really know what TV does. Yeah, that is to say, they don't know if All in the Family is making people more or less racist, was one of the big questions. There was nothing to really show that it had any sort of causal impact whatsoever. And when you talk to people who are involved with the show, they'll talk about people who would come up to them and say all sorts of stuff one way or the other. But yeah, there's just no real research to support the idea of how TV is supposedly changing or not changing people. But to Ben, it's just taken as a product of fact. And he compares it to fashion, how it's like how everyone took on Rachel's haircut, or everyone thought leather jackets were cool because of Fonzie. I don't think it was Fonzie that made leather jackets cool, but the idea that people are just adopting these politics like fashion statements is pretty insulting. This is juicy. I like this bit. Here's Ben's definition of comedy. True comedy only satisfies because, in the end, the authority structure is generally validated. When it isn't validated, that's drama. That's why comedies of errors typically end with a wedding. After spending 3 hours watching Benedict and Beatrice mock marriage, they end up under the canopy, reinforcing the status quo. My God. That one statement just destroys satire, doesn't it? The idea that comedy has to uphold the status quo. Just no, it can be. I'm not saying it can't. But there's so many forms of comedy that are about tearing down the status quo. It's wow. Shocking to read that, how little he understands about comedy. And it's the idea that he gives this example of how when he hits his head and like his wife laughs, it's because she knows he's not really hurt. And he says the same is true of authority. When the authority remains generally unharmed, there is no problem. We can mock it and chastise it and laugh at it. But what happens when the authority structure abandons the stage altogether? Now comic irony has no stable target and descends into nihilism, attacking everything left standing with equal fervor. This is where we are today. It's we are not that way today. Last I checked, there are a lot of still power structures that are still there. And God, his views on comedy is just so... It's so bad. The idea that it's only funny if we don't really mean it. That is to say, we can mock the power structure and the status quo as long as we don't actually try and change it. as long as we aren't like subversive, as long as we aren't trying to upend or use it for some sort of symbol of social change, um, how is that comedy? How is that interesting? That is so boring. That is toothless. That is like gutless comedy. Um, and yeah, I think it really reveals a lot what he thinks is funny. Um, I wonder what that means about like racist jokes and the fact that he's like tried to. Has he? I know people at the Daily Wire. Jeremy Boring, for instance, talks about how he misses racist jokes. Is that the sort of hierarchy we're trying to uphold, or is it? It's only funny when we know it's not real. But how do you know it's not real? Do only people? Is everyone in on the joke with you? Is everyone being ironic when they make those kind of jokes? Makes you wonder. Laughter is a weapon to be wielded, not an ultimate good. And our comedy writers know this full well, which is why they marshal the power of laughter to their political causes. The writers and executives know that a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. I'd love to say it's because conservatives are so, let's say, morally upstanding that they refuse to ever use comedy, but it's clear that they try and fail. But this is a very funny line that they're using comedy against us. It's like, you could use them back, but you're not funny, so I guess you're disarmed in this particular fight. Oof. When Nixon became president, blue-collar workers suddenly became reactionary monsters like Archie Bunker, revenged by Hollywood against the real-life workers who shied away from George McGovern. Again, presenting this one show that was very unique, as it was an outlier in the situation, as like Hollywood was going after the working class. No, Norman Lear was lucky to get a show on the air that happened to do very well in the ratings, and that's why it survived. The network was not putting its thumb on the scale for this show. In no way was it some sort of conspiracy. Since then, however, blue-collar workers have fallen totally off the radar. Most of today's comic heroes are urban liberals, the type of folks you'd expect to see at an Obama fundraiser in Beverly Hills. 2011, wasn't Always Sunny a show back then? I don't think I'd see them at an Obama fundraiser, to be honest. I think I'd have to look at 2011 to like remember what the top shows were, though. Luckily, I have a list of the top-rated shows on TV over right here. Let's look at, are there any comedies here? No. Oh, The Big Bang Theory. Are those like, is that Obama supporters, I guess? Maybe? I don't know. That show was kind of apolitical, wasn't it? Also, it was bad. Not a lot of comedies, actually. Mike and Molly? Yeah, I don't think those are the typical people at Obama fundraisers. But anyway, that's what comedy was like in 2011, you guys, according to very smart person, Ben Shapiro. How much more of this should I do? Yeah, I want to talk about the shows more. Let's skip ahead when he starts talking about specific TV shows. What was this? Oh, Smothers Brothers. Oh yeah, here's where he mentions it. Dan also said that he had to cancel the show because of pressure from President Johnson. I was forced to cancel the Smothers Brothers at one point because they were so anti-Vietnam, he told me. But it opened the door for what would come next. Okay, so they were pushing left-wing stuff, but then they had to cancel it. He passed the buck on the, I guess the Johnson administration made them cancel it. It's a little more complicated than that. But anyway, he did mention, I'm glad he finally mentioned the Smothers Brothers were canceled, but I guess they would, was that a good thing or a bad thing? Ben doesn't really comment on it, does he? Which I think is very, very suspect. I think he likes it. But anyway, here we go. I highlighted a lot of this because, again, All in the Family has been in my head recently. I bet the stream would be more fun to watch after you've watched the video, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait for the video. So this is just sort of summarizing stuff that I've already talked about. I love his description here. Archie's son-in-law, Meathead, his name is actually Michael, was the stand-in for liberals, a stand-up guy who fought Archie's narrow-mindedness at every turn. Only rarely would Archie score a point, and even then, it was usually at the expense of Meathead's laziness or loafing, not his politics. So here's a quote I remember very vividly that Norman Lear said about Michael. He described him as a horseshit liberal. The idea that he's someone who espouses a lot of political beliefs, but isn't informed or smart or know about them. You don't see it show up very often just because Archie is so much more comically ignorant. But there are many episodes where Michael is revealed to be ignorant about something, or he's revealed to have like a couple of bad takes, or he doesn't understand the causes he's supposedly championing for, particularly when it comes to women and feminism. And he's revealed to be not so as enlightened as he presents himself to be. He's full of crap, basically, in a lot of instances. It's right that he's not as bad as Archie, but to say that he's not also being critiqued and he's just this like awesome dude who's the hero of the show is just wrong. He's also not on the show the whole way through. He leaves in the 8th season and it runs for a 9th, and then there's like 4 seasons of 4 more years, I should say, of Archie Bunker. So yeah, there we go. When CBS greenlit All in the Family in order to reach out to supposedly more valuable urban audiences, it opened the door to the total takeover of liberal television. That's a bad sentence. It should be the liberal takeover of television, because if you wouldn't need to take over liberal television if it was already like that. Anyway, yeah. Now, for the first time, the blue-collar guy was the villain, and his son-in-law, the aspiring graduate student, was the hero. While All in the Family had the trappings of the lower-class comedy, it actually had an elitist approach to politics. No. Archie was not the villain. He was often wrong, but he was not a villain in the series. It was deeply sympathetic towards him, and it was trying to sort of rectify the idea that people from an older generation could still be loved and appreciated, even though their traditional values may sometimes be at odds with the more modern understanding of things. He also completely ignores Edith, who is Archie's wife, who very much rolls with the times. And God, there's one episode in particular, and I talk about this in the video. There's an episode where Edith loses her faith. She's very religious, and then her friend, who is a drag queen, is killed in a hate crime on the street. It's horrible, and this is one of those things where it's like, damn, this show goes pretty hard about it. And she just like stops going to church and doesn't believe, and she's like going to abandon her Christian faith. And then it's Michael who actually comes to the rescue, even though he's an atheist. He helps her understand, or I should say, appreciate her faith in a way that it may not make sense to her, but it's not about understanding everything all at once, but understanding something. And it's a way of being in the world, and sort of acknowledging that ignorance we have. Anyway, it's basically reaffirms her faith and reaffirms her Christian worldview in a way. And I certainly, as a person on the left who does not ascribe to any religious faith, I don't feel like I was being spoke to at all. If anything, it's a direct appeal to traditional Christian values there, and an adherence to religion. But that's like, I don't know. I guess that's an example he wouldn't bring up, which is a shame, because it's a really good episode, good two-parter. Just to answer Sergei Grekov in the chat, we are reading a book by Ben Shapiro about television and how it was taken over by the left and is brainwashing everybody. It's not a good book. So there we go. Here's another way Ben twists quotes. Norman Lear is talking about his shows here. They all had a great deal of social awareness. I'm a serious man. Life is a serious matter, but I see it through a prism that finds comedy in anything, a gift from the universe. Comedy, in other words, was a vehicle for Lear's politics. That comes through in almost every episode. That's not what he's saying in that quote. That's saying how he can find laughter and humor in everything in his life. And it's very much, if you look through a lot of what he says and writes, that's a big thing in Norman Lear's thing. He's always trying to find laughter and humor in things. And Ben is just flipping it around, saying that this is all just him using comedy as a tool of driving across his politics. I think his politics are a part of his work, but they're not they're not the primary goal. He wanted to depict reality on his shows, by the way, not deliver political screeds. But that's all Ben seems to understand. It's sad. Um, Archie has made the dumbest possible case against draft dodging. This is from an episode in All in the Family where there's a draft dodger, and Archie makes kind of a buffoonish response to why it's bad to not want to go to Vietnam and die. He has not spoken of the duty of citizens of the United States to follow the law. He has not defended the war. He has not talked about the duty of soldiers to one another. He has instead presented the liberal case that young people are dying for selfish old people and that the war is wrong. This is about the Vietnam War, which was wrong, and it was wrong to send people to die for that. Ben is just on the wrong side of history here, but he's taken the bold stance of being pro-Vietnam War and pro-Vietnam War draft. I mean, if that's what you want to do. It's amazing that, yeah, someone pointed out, imagine dying on the hill that the Nam draft was a good idea. That is a wild hill to die on. In 2011. Whew, whew. This is how, like, old Ben's politics are. He may have been born in the 80s, but he very much has a sensibility of someone from the 1960s. I love this quote from Carol O'Connor that he quotes here. I just want to quote it because I like it. And there's O'Connor he calls him an ultra liberal. I never got that vibe of him, to be honest. He was left leaning, sure, but anyway, look at the difference in language here. This is Carol O'Connor, star of All in the Family, talking. Writing and rehearsing and performing a TV episode in which Archie Bunker confronted a defector from the Vietnam War, I was able to satirize, albeit grimly, the mixed emotions of that uptight majority. Archie was a prototype. His variants were and are on all levels of American life, the highest, the lowest, and the in-between. They were all bound to the heroic vision of America, though not as Duke Wayne was bound to it in perfect belief. They are all bound by a fearful apprehension about national life, that to analyze its weaknesses and contradictions is to destroy it. To gaze steadily at the mythology of it is the only way to preserve it. Nothing new in this. It is known as patriotism. That is such a great distillation of what this character is and what the show was doing in that particular episode. The idea that people's adherence to this idea of patriotism prevents them from reflecting on the nation state and like the country itself as an object of deeper critical understandings. The idea that you could criticize a society in the effort to improve it instead of mindlessly saluting the flag. And this is the thing. Ben will then reduce him to this is Carol O'Connor's very sophisticated understanding of patriotism and how it's deployed, and his consideration of that in the character of Archie Bunker and Ben just says he is the villain of the piece and is an ignorant villain. Like, way to just like completely ignore anything in that statement and just reduce it to you're trying to make him a villain. It's like, no, he's trying to discuss the way in which people engage with patriotism and how it reflects a blindness within them. It's just kind of sad. It's just a very sad, reductive way to look at art. Okay. Here's a line that annoyed me. Rob got his start in the business as a writer for the Smothers Brothers, then got his job on All in the Family because of his dad's reputation in the business. Rob Reiner's father is Carl Reiner, who was a big guy in the business, and no doubt he got in that edition because of who his father was, almost certainly, and that opened a lot of doors for him. That's not why he was cast as Michael on All in the Family. Two other actors were actually cast as the son-in-law character before Rob Reiner. It didn't work out with either of those actors, and eventually Rob Reiner got the role. To say that he just got it because of his dad's reputation is ridiculous. He's actually fantastic in the show, and Rob Reiner is incredibly accomplished. He went on to direct several major movies, Spinal Tap, The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally. He's been massively successful. Did nepotism open the door for him? Oh, absolutely. But he had the talent to actually make it work. I'm not a fan of Nepo babies in general, and I think Hollywood is filled with them. Lots of talentless people. But Rob Reiner, I would say, is someone who is genuinely talented. And I don't know how you can watch All in the Family and not see his performance and how good it is. And compared to the other actors who were cast in the son-in-law character earlier, he's so much better than them. So much better than them. Yeah, so I find that line in particular pretty bad. He talks about the hatred for Archie's positions being I specifically from homosexuality I want to talk about. Abortion doesn't come up at all in All in the Family, by the way, but homosexuality is discussed in 5 episodes of All in the Family. 5 out of, what was it, 203? And that includes the 2-parter where there's the hate crime that leads to Edith losing her faith, which is really more about religion than anything else. There is a horrible hate crime, mind you, but that's it. The other 3 episodes, 2 of them feature a drag queen who is actually, they actually got a consultant from, I think it was like a gay advocacy group, and they were actually pushing to make the drag queen character straight because they wanted to sort of disentangle the idea of drag queens just being gay men. Because it sort of pushes the idea that gay men just want to be women, and it's ironically the opposite these days, where trans women are just being portrayed as being men who are gay, which is obviously not true and messed up. Anyway, there's really only 2 episodes, I would say, in All in the Family. Oh, no, it wasn't 5, it was 6 total. Anyway, there's only 2 episodes that involve gay characters in All in the Family. The one I mentioned earlier about how there's like a football player who's gay, and it's all about, oh, not all gay people are like very effeminate stereotypes. The other one is about a school teacher who was in her long-term relationship with Edith's cousin, and when Edith's cousin dies, they decide she doesn't have any way of sort of remembering that, because just being a friend means you don't inherit anything, and Edith went out of her way to give this woman the tea set her cousin left her because she was like, oh, she wanted to acknowledge their relationship. It was really nice. And like the only real sort of message of that episode is like gay people couldn't live openly, specifically because they were school teachers, and you couldn't be a school teacher and be gay. You'd get fired, which I think is bad. But I guess that in Ben's mind, I imagine that's pushing the homosexuality on people, even though gay people didn't have rights back then, the way regular people did. But there you go. Let's move a little. Let's go to a slightly more modern show. I have something here on like Cheers, was it? Oh yeah, he has a whole thing about how about how this annoyed me, because he talks about how the struggle between Sam and Diane on Cheers is like this push between the right and the left, and that you got like the blue collar Sam Malone and the elitist Diane Chambers, like the left-wing liberal educated person, and it's kind of nonsense, or he misses the really ironic twist of Cheers, is that yes, Sam represents that sort of more right-wing mindset that you would associate with a blue-collar person, whereas Diane represents the more sort of effete, elitist, liberal elite person that you would, again, associate with someone in that political side of things. But their positions on the show are completely inverted. Sam Malone is a former baseball player who owns a bar, right? He has all the power in that relationship. Diane is like a student who has to tend bar to make a living because she has no money. Like, I mean, her parents have money, but she doesn't, is the point. And that whole relationship is flipped on it. And that's why it's kind of interesting. It's not about civilizing Sam through Diane. Their relationship is toxic. Like, they're not supposed to be together because they're a bad fit. That's the whole point of the show. But Ben seems to have missed that. He just sees like Sam is right wing, therefore Diane is trying to destroy this right wing, is destroying like the idea of an independent right wing man, and liberals need to domesticate conservatives, kind of thing. Just bizarre take on Cheers. I just don't think he liked it, which is fine. Oh yeah, here's a great line. In essence, there's no difference between the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Cosby Show, other than the color of the main character. But that's quite a difference, according to the left, which is why the Cosby Show made it onto the air. I have a whole video on the Cosby Show. it's been a while since I've watched any of the Dick Van Dyke Show. They are very different. It kind of blows my mind that like Ben is just saying they're the same show. For one thing, the Huxtables are a very different family than the Petries. Or Petries, I don't know how to say that name, but because you've got a married couple with one young child versus a married couple with like what, 5 kids, and there's a difference between working for an ad agency and being a stay-at-home or a home office doctor, and they're such different shows. But to Ben, they're just conservative shows that are just kind of the same. To say I mean, there's this wild bit at the end of this book. We're not going to get that far because I don't think I can keep going. We're not even halfway through. But he talks about how much he loved the Cosby Show because it didn't talk about race. He doesn't really say why he liked it, but he just liked it and didn't talk about race, and therefore was non-political. It made a number of points about gender politics constantly. But whatever. That's not politics to Ben, I guess, or it's convenient. Someone asks, what does Ben think of Married with Children? That actually comes up in this book. He's not a fan. He thinks it's really bad. It's just gross in his mind. Also, Dick Van Dyke and his wife slept in separate beds. I just want to point out that's very weird. That's very, very weird. Because it was the 1960s, everyone. Let's just keep going. Oh yeah, Roseanne. This was another one I took a lot of notes on. He talks about how if John Goodman had disappeared from Roseanne overnight, few people would have noticed. He was merely a foil to show Roseanne's strength. So Dan is a very important character in Roseanne. If you got rid of him, the show would be very different. He's not as important as Roseanne because that was kind of the shift in the show, right? It used to be the father who was the focal point of these family sitcoms. Roseanne put the emphasis on the mother. The fact that Ben noticed that and only sees it as like a degradation of fathers is quite telling, because it's really just a role reversal. Dan is still a huge part of the show, but since he's not the main character, to Ben, that's like making him nothing. It's really silly. Just like when he writes, Roseanne portrayed working class people as innately liberal. They're not innately liberal. There are working class people who are left-leaning. The fact that this particular family was more often left-leaning was something, but again, he's sort of taking for granted that people tended to be more conservative on television, and as soon as you see a family espousing more left-wing beliefs, he sees it as a particular attack. That's why when he was like looking at earlier seasons, he would like pick and choose like specific shows that were pushing an agenda, and they were changing everything, as if all the other shows weren't pushing some kind of agenda. He just sees things conservative, as most TV shows tend to be, as like neutral, as if they're not pushing an agenda. This is something I mentioned many times in the past, right? Everything is taking a stance on politics one way through the other, because a political lens is something we apply to a show. So when you look at characters on a TV series and they're in sort of a traditional family unit, I don't know, they go to church or whatever, and they work regular jobs and are integrated into your standard capitalist society, that is pushing a very specific political vision of the status quo, sort of just maintaining regular. You may see it as like normal or default or having no political basis, but everything kind of does have a political perspective. It's so ubiquitous that we don't notice it, but it's true. And some shows, when they dare to criticize that or look at something from a different perspective, they get marked as political, just because it's different. Yeah, someone says, only liberal messages are inherently political. Conservative messages are just reaffirming what is right and good. Exactly, Tom Davis. Someone asks, do you think Ben rewatched the shows he's talking about or basing these takes off his own memory? 100% memory. He does transcribe a few scenes. I was very amused because he transcribed one of the scenes in All in the Family and just got some of the lines wrong, which was very funny to show that he wasn't paying very close attention to it. He like misses entire lines and he mixes up words, and there's this one scene where Archie yells out, "I don't want to talk about that goddamn war anymore." That actually was re-recorded when it was broadcast because he couldn't say goddamn. So he says rotten damn war. For some reason in this book, Ben writes it down as he's saying rotten dirty war. It's like, no, it was broadcast as him saying rotten damn, not rotten dirty. That's just an example of one of the things he gets wrong. And that's just describing what was in the actual stuff he's supposedly talking about. He's not very familiar with many of these shows, I get. He's watched like a couple of episodes. That's the impression I get from a lot of this. Especially he's like in his mid-20s. Who has time to watch all these TV shows when you're mid-20s? Classic TV, no less. I like how he listed That 70s Show as like a liberal show. I mean, kind of, but not really. I mean, there's a bit of messaging in there, but anyway, let's talk about The Simpsons. Has anyone heard of that show, The Simpsons? I've heard a bit. I like this quote from Matt Groening. The Simpsons' message over and over again is that your moral authorities don't always have your best interests in mind. I think that's a great message for kids. 100% true. Matt Groening with a huge truth bomb right there. I like this quote from Ben. He describes them as the writers of The Simpsons, liberal nihilists. Can you be a liberal nihilist? That's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? You're either a nihilist or you're not. I'm a nihilist, but more of a liberal nihilist. I think he means former liberals turned nihilists. But he's a writer, so. Here's a fun thing. Reverend Lovejoy, Ned Flanders, and Mr. Burns are all portrayed as ignoramuses, killjoys, happy idiots, and or evil. I want to sit with that for a second. Ignoramuses, killjoys, happy idiots, and or evil. Reverend Lovejoy, Ned Flanders, and Mr. Burns. I would say only Mr. Burns is evil there. I wouldn't describe any of these as ignoramuses or happy idiots. Reverend Lovejoy and Ned Flanders are definitely killjoys, though. And I mean, Mr. Burns is kind of ignorant of modern things. But like, wow, that's none of that is accurate. It's like he doesn't quite understand it. Here's another one. Lisa is vulnerable on The Simpsons because her starry-eyed schemes are doomed to failure, but she is the main, pure, good, and uncorrupted. Reverend Lovejoy and Ned Flanders are vulnerable because they are stupid, ignorant, and worthy of consistent mockery. No. First off, Lisa is often shown to be missing the point and often too zealous and pushy and bossy and arrogant. She's got a lot of flaws. Reverend Lovejoy and Ned Flanders are stupid and ignorant. No, neither of them are that, actually. They are mocked, but everyone on The Simpsons is mocked at some point and made to look silly. I don't know why they wouldn't be. And if The Simpsons has debased one element of traditional values more than any other, it is that the traditional family structure. Homer is garrulous goof-off, Bart is a juvenile delinquent, Marge is the long-suffering wife, and Lisa's the good-natured and idealistically brilliant liberal. Sound familiar? It should. It's a good deal like All in the Family. It's actually not. Marge and Edith are very similar on All in the Family. That one you can make a good case because they're the stay-at-home wife, very funny voices, very religious, very sweet and good-natured. Homer is a goofball. Archie is like, he's not bright and he's a goof at times, but he's more a bigot and just a really angry guy. Homer is not at all. I guess you would compare Lisa to Michael being the liberal, but Lisa is actually genuinely brilliant, whereas Michael is not. And also, Bart is a juvenile delinquent. That does not match up onto the character of Gloria at all. Like, they're not even close. They're like in different shows. Gloria is almost a non-entity, unfortunately, but she's nice. She does things as the show goes on, but she's nothing like Bart. What a bizarre comparison there. I also like, unlike All in the Family, however, the father figure cares little or nothing about his wife and children, except on Deus Ex Machina occasions where such a care is called for by the storyline. To say Homer doesn't care about his family, like, what are you talking about? That's very, like, Homer is selfish, absolutely. And does he neglect his kids? Of course he does. But he loves them. And it's not a Deus Ex Machina occasions, right? Like, if it's happening pretty frequently, it's not really Deus Ex Machina anymore, or more is it? They're pretty consistent with who he is. He's just a bad father. But that's anyway. He is a drunken bore who belches, farts, and knocks around the case. He only strangles Bart, to be fair. He is the image of the ugly American, so often evoked by the Europeans. He really doesn't like Europe, does he? But yeah, this is... Wow. Anyway, thank you, Mohammed Al-Sanan, for becoming a member. You know what you can do as a member now? You can do this thing. You can do this little emote. See it in the chat? Little Blue Jay emote? Isn't that cool? Oh, how do I get my chat to close now? Anyway. Yeah, see? Members can do that. It's the only one I've got, but it's pretty cool, right? So yeah, I don't think he quite gets these characters. Did I have anything else? He misunderstood a line from Murphy Brown. I don't like this talking point. Seinfeld, so often described as a show about nothing, lives up to its name. That's not exactly what Seinfeld was about. It was about a comedian trying to get material for his act. That was actually the premise of the show when it first started. And I wouldn't call it a show about nothing. It gets that named a lot just because there's a whole thing where they're trying to get a show pitched to NBC, and people are like, oh, it's similar to like how Seinfeld got on the air, except not really. And the idea of a show about nothing was what they pitched. I think for now I might be done with this book. Is there anything I really want to say? Oh, here's him not... You know he hates Elaine with a passion. Here's the part about Elaine. Elaine dumps her boyfriend when he reveals that he's pro-life. One of Larry's great ideas was having the boyfriend who might be anti-abortion. Are you going to break up with a gorgeous guy because he's not pro-choice? That isn't deep political commentary, but it's political commentary nonetheless, because we like Elaine, so we take what she says at face value. Only ugly people are pro-life. The joke there is on Elaine. It's weird that I have to explain this, but the idea is that Elaine can't understand that someone might be basing her politics, basing her dating on someone's, or evaluating someone's politics based on their appearance makes her look silly, right? That's the point. Not that ugly people are pro-life. Also, thank you, Mithril, for becoming a member. Oh, that's on the thanks tier? I guess everyone gets the emote if you're a member. But yeah, isn't it cool that you get to enjoy that emote? But yeah, zero media literacy, Ben. It's really shocking. Also, yeah, we don't like Elaine. Not real, like, we don't like her as a role model. We might enjoy her as a character who's entertaining, but it's like, going back to Homer Simpson, I like Homer as a character. Would I want to be Homer or have Homer in my life? No, absolutely not. That sounds like a nightmare. But being sympathetic to someone isn't the same as wanting to be like them, I think. And in some cases, you're not supposed to be sympathetic to these characters when they're in the wrong. Oh, here's another one where you didn't get it. Like the whole, not that there's anything wrong with it. That's from that episode of Seinfeld where they keep being mistaken for being gay. And they're like, we're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. No, of course not. And here's the rest of this quote from Ben, though. The amazing thing about this episode is that they're saying not that there's anything wrong with it, like 5 times. And the last time they're practically in tears. And the show wins a Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation Award. Obviously, they're saying there's something terrible about it. This is the oddest thing about today's comedy world. The funniest material springs from liberals bashing other liberals, but liberals can't even recognize when other liberals are bashing them. Like, do you not understand what that joke was? They're playing on the insecurity of George and Jerry, who are being mistaken for being gay. Like, that's the joke. It's not that liberals or straight men being mistaken for gay is a bad thing. It's just that they're so insecure about their sexuality is that they feel like they have to clarify it. Or they realize that they're jumping so quickly to be like, we're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Um, like that's the joke. The joke isn't that there is something wrong with being gay. It's that the fact that they're so quick to say that they're not reveals their own insecurities, right? Like that's what they're trying to do, or at least that's the joke as I understood it. But apparently, it's in Ben's mind affirming the idea that there is something wrong with it. Oh wow, Ice Lava gifted 5 Jose memberships. That's a lot of memberships. Uh, Enjoy all those people who just got memberships. Robert Friel, Zachary Goodman, Vinny, Carter, Freilich, and Melmy. Wow. Hope you all thank Ice Lava for being so cool. That's very generous of you, dude. Or I don't even know if you are a dude. Whatever, however you choose to identify, I celebrate and affirm that. Okay. I feel like I got to keep going now for the new members. Make sure you use your emote. Here, I'll... Wait, that's not what I wanted to do. Use your cool new emote now that you have that power. Okay, what else do I have to say? Oh, I don't think I took anything on Friends, did I? Yeah, it's a lot of not too much. Here's a nice Star Trek one. Uh, he called Jean-Luc Picard a sexless eunuch. Picard hooks up with a couple of women. Come on, sexless eunuch. Just because he's not banging everyone doesn't make him a sexless eunuch. He doesn't. I get the impression that he does not like Jean-Luc Picard, which means he is my enemy. How can you not like Jean-Luc Picard? You can be a bad man like Ben Shapiro. That's how. Oh yes, I think I've run out of notes here. Funnily enough, there's one more. There it is. Oh no, wait, that's not the one I wanted. Look how quickly we're going now. We're getting through this book quick. In fact, I don't think we're gonna do any more. Yeah, I can't find it. All right. Well, if you pause that PDF, you'll get to read the whole book. I'm sure it didn't capture the whole book. Look at all these sources, right? It sounds like he really understood some of this stuff. It's sort of a reminder of sometimes being hit over the head with sources doesn't mean you're representing them well. Be wary from that. And also check sources. This is something people don't do frequently enough. Just because someone cites a source doesn't mean they expect anyone to check in on it. I still remember that Steven Crowder video I did where he was talking about gun violence and he pulled a chart about how Norway has the most per capita gun deaths because of mass shootings or something. And the source he used was explaining why those stats were wrong and manipulative. Oh wow, another gifted membership, this time from Kiki Mora, to Francisco Solis. How nice. Well, that's really, really cool of you to do, Kiki. And Francisco, make sure to thank the right person. Okay. I kind of want to keep streaming, but I realize now I have run out of all the prepared material. I'm going to open it up to you, the viewing public, on what I will or will not talk about now, or we can just chill here and I can answer questions if anyone's got any. I can address a few things I know people have asked about me and my comments towards Steven Crowder's lawsuit, the one coming from Jared. I don't remember his last name. I think that's interesting. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm curious how that'll turn out. But I actually really dislike NDAs. I think people should be free to speak about their employers regardless. And there are very few whistleblower protections for private entities, which is a massive problem. We have them for public workers, but there's a huge issue of how you can't speak your conscience if you work for a private company without fearing reprisal. So if you report your company for breaking the law you can be fired immediately, which seems kind of messed up, doesn't it? Um, that's kind of how these protections often work out, unfortunately. Someone asked, have I seen Columbo? No, no, I have not. Someone asked if I enjoyed Primal Rage. Not really. I think I played it once or twice. Someone asking about my mental state. I feel pretty good, everyone. I'm feeling all right. The head is in a nice place right now. I gotta say, this stream is weirdly helping. My energy has been up this whole time. I feel like this has been fun. I'm glad I had so much to talk about. I want more streams where I have stuff to say and talk. I wish I had more. Someone asked if I'm gonna watch Civil War. Probably not. At least I have no plans to. If it gets good reviews, maybe. But I don't have a lot of time to see movies. I will be seeing the Gundam Seed movie though. You can count on that. I have tickets for it, and it's my tickets are bad, real bad. But I don't know. I'll deal with that, I guess. Someone asked, since I was involved in that College Humor thing, what College Humor thing was I involved with? I don't remember that at all. And I've never seen Jake and Amir. How about Mark Bankston scolding Elon Musk? I have not seen that. Excited for the new season of The Bear? I've not seen any of The Bear. Someone asked, did you enjoy the animated show Primal? I've not seen it. Someone asked, Bluey retrospective in a few years. You know, a lot of people talk about how great Bluey is, but I probably won't do a retrospective on it. Those few episodes I did watch when researching the Benke video looked pretty good, though. And I've been told it's like it gets even better. Probably. Does Ben rant about SpongeBob in the book? I don't think so. I didn't notice it anyway. That'd be funny, though. Someone asks, are you going to mention All in the Family was based on a British satirical sitcom, Till Death Do Us Part? It's actually Till Death Us Do Part. And yes, I will be mentioning that very briefly, because that's part of the origin of the show. I couldn't not mention that, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I don't go into too much detail about that because there's so much to talk about in All in the Family. Yeah, that's the thing about Civil War has that Andy No footage. That's kind of why I don't want to do it, but or want to watch it now. But because he could have gotten that footage from anywhere. The fact that they got it from him is kind of gross. Okay. Someone asked when the new season of The Bear is coming out. Someone should let Ivan McRonda know about that. Oh, someone mentioned Candace Owens leaving the Daily Wire. Oh, we can talk about that. And I haven't seen Monkey Man. That's the next one. Someone asked if I like pro wrestling at all. Yeah, I have some opinions on that. But let's talk about Candace Owens first. Favorite Star Trek shows The Next Generation. Okay, Candace Owens leaving the Daily Wire. One thing I noticed after Candace Owens leaving the Daily Wire, and this is going to be a bit of commentary you haven't seen too many hours. So, yeah, my mouth I think needs a little moisture. Give me a moment here. Grounded for Life retrospective is not coming anytime soon. So Candace Owens leaving the Daily Wire. Obviously, it's because of her statements about Israel. It's weird how she can like be an open friend with an anti-Semitic person like Kanye West. But yeah, she was, for those wondering, Mariana. She was sort of fired and left. But anyway, she's not with the Daily Wire anymore. Last I heard, she and Ben Shapiro might be debating something at some point. So her departure, I think with it took a lot of people, a surprising number of people, I imagine, that the Daily Wire did not expect to lose, because her leaving is not just because people signed up for subscriptions with Daily Wire Plus because they love Candace Owens, but the fact that she was more or less kicked off the platform will make certain people upset. They'll think that the Daily Wire is silencing people, that they're not the free speech heroes that they thought they were. Of course, they never were, but these are the people who mean free speech for people on the right. And Candace Owens has a lot of currency with more far-right spaces and people. Uh, just look at the stuff she was saying on the Daily Wire, constantly pushing fringe conspiracy theories. Like one of the last things she did on the Daily Wire was push the idea that Emmanuel Macron's wife was actually trans. Uh, bizarre statements. Her evidence is complete trash. But that was something she used on her did on her show before Daily Wire cut her loose. Not for that reason, but that was sort of emblematic of the nonsense she would push and the audience she courts. Um, her comments regarding the Jewish people specifically have always been deeply questionable. The fact that she went to work for a company with Ben Shapiro at the helm, or I should say, as their most popular host. He's not really the president of the network. That's or the channel. That's Jeremy Boring, but it was odd and constantly talking about how, like, the Nazis just went too far for being outside their own borders, and weird, suspicious, far right adjacent stuff that Candace would say. Yeah, that's going to rub up against some of the sensibilities of the Daily Wire, and but the problem is a lot of the people who are into the Daily, so a segment of the Daily Wire's audience is like here for that stuff, and I don't think it's a coincidence that when Candace Owens left the Daily Wire, that Jeremy Boring had a debate with Nick Fuentes. He did it like within the week, that is very shocking to me because Nick Fuentes is Ben Shapiro hates Nick Fuentes for a lot of reasons. Probably because he's an anti-Semite. That's denies the Holocaust, all sorts of horrible things that Nick Fuentes does. Those are pretty good reasons. But also Nick Fuentes has gone after Ben Shapiro in public one time. There's this really gross video of him ambushing Ben Shapiro when he's with his family and like putting his like wife and kids on camera. It's grotesque. But yeah, that's who Nick Fuentes is. And the fact that like 2 years ago, Jeremy Boring was all like, oh, no one should ever speak to someone like Nick Fuentes, who's just this horrible dude. And all of a sudden he's like, 2 years later, he's trying to have a friendly debate with them and maybe they'll talk more in the future. It's like, wow, how times change, doesn't it? Times change. And I think that's Jeremy Boring trying to appeal to that hard right audience and be like, we're not trying to like turn our back on you entirely. We'll still like make a few dog whistles to far right stuff, but I don't know. I think the damage is done, and I suspect the Daily Wire has lost a lot of subscribers recently because of that Candace Owens decision, and those are subscribers that I don't think are coming back too soon because the Daily Wire's kind of hit its ceiling. Last I heard, they were about making the same amount of money this year as they made last year, which means they are no longer growing. Their subscriber base is quite likely stagnant. And if their subscriber base is sort of staying where it is, they can't afford to lose people. Because when you lose paying subscribers, your revenue starts going down. And I don't know what the margins are like at the Daily Wire because they don't publish their financials publicly, but I suspect not great. Or at least they're very thin margins because they spend a lot of money on advertising. They make these big budget movies that, like, how much money do you think Lady Ballers really made? It cost them a couple $1 million. It wasn't like a $50 million investment, but it cost them money. Bentkey. Oh man, should we do Bentkey for a second? Remember in my video when I described Bentkey, like no one was downloading it. If you went to the Google Play Store, it only had 50,000 plus downloads. That was, how many months ago was that, everyone? I put that video out like 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 4 months ago. And it only had 50,000 plus downloads on the Google Play Store. You want to guess how much that's changed by? It hasn't changed at all. It's still 50K plus. So in the course of 4 months, it's shown almost growth that doesn't show up on what few metrics we have available. That's, to me, very funny. And it speaks to the fact that Bentkey might be a complete failure. And they spent like, what, $30 million on that in its first year. And they're spending they were supposed to spend another $30 million on it this year. That's a big problem. big problem. They need people to be signing up for that shit. The next big push they have for it is that Brett Cooper Snow White movie. But if they think that's going to get a bunch of new people to sign up, I sincerely doubt that. Um, Someone mentioned uh, Gina Carano suing Disney. That says it all, doesn't it? Someone just mentioned Gina Carano. I don't think they mentioned the lawsuit. But the fact that she's suing Disney to get put back on The Mandalorian, I thought she was going to suddenly explode in right wing media. She was going to make Daily Wire movies. But, Terror on the Prairie was a bomb. Obviously, it made nothing in the theaters, but I don't think it drew a lot of new subscribers because the two movies they were going to do with Gina Carano became one movie. I mean, if she's a big star and brings people to your platform, why wouldn't she make the second movie? Probably because she doesn't have the star power that they thought she did. Whew, okay. Someone talking the imagery of Benki. Let's not talk about that, actually. That's weird. Bloomberg. With more than 1 million subscribers and $200 million in revenue last year, the Daily Wire is unusually successful in podcasting. Oh, yeah. I know exactly where those numbers come from. When they say last year, they mean 2022. We haven't heard anything since. Ben Shapiro made a vague reference to $200 million revenue in a podcast a few months ago. He said 150 to 200 million, to be more clear. But as far as I know, they have not announced any more numbers. I would love to see them. If I'm wrong in this, I'm willing to be corrected. But I don't think things are going well at the Daily Wire, to be perfectly honest. So there it goes. And yeah, I wonder where. Also, mainly saying it's successful in podcasting. They do have or I shouldn't say good, successful podcasts. But they want to make movies. That's the problem. They need their other ventures to start making money. And you can also tell how financially successful someone or some entity is by like the sort of scams it's pulling. So like when you see Jeremy Boring selling his and hers chocolates because they have nuts or whatever as like pushing back against woke Hershey or whatever, that's such a low level scam. You're making like maybe $100,000 off that. Like if you're a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, why are you pulling off these low level scams? It's like when Trump was selling those gaudy sneakers. Like you wouldn't do that unless you really need the money. Someone asked, do I listen to a lot? I actually listen to a ton of podcasts. It's because the thing is, since I work in front of a computer all the time, I like taking breaks from screens, but I also like listening to things and learning about the world. So I get a lot of my news from podcasts these days, instead of reading it on a screen, just because I'm staring at a screen for way too long. Although sometimes I end up listening to podcasts while I'm like playing a video game or something, and that's defeating the original purpose, isn't it? I should do it more when I go for a walk or something. Someone keeps bringing up Moral Oral. I've never seen it. I don't have any time, or I don't have any plans to do that. Also, someone talking about how they use pronouns to differentiate between nuts and plain. Yeah, doesn't that make your chocolate bars woke? Someone should point that out, but I guess they'll be like, oh, they're being ironic. Oh, okay. Then why are they doing it again? But do I ever listen to some more news? Yes, I listened to it several times. I mostly watch that one, actually. I've listened to the podcast a few times, and Behind the Bastards I've listened to on occasions. Someone thought, what are my thoughts on pro wrestling again? I liked it when I was younger. I think like most people, I think the best pro wrestling was when I was a kid. That was the best pro wrestling. Everyone seems to say that. I have been sort of, I don't know, the backstage stuff is so much more interesting these days. Well, I remember watching that footage they put out recently, that CM Punk footage from AEW. What a mistake that was. But yeah, I don't know. I did watch a bit of WrestleMania. That was all right. That main event was insane. I don't know. There's a lot to say, I guess. I've never seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I guess we're doing the Q&A. Right now. Ugh. Oh yeah, someone talking about Vince McMahon. That's horrible, right? He's like, he went from being just sort of like a gross dude to being one of the worst people. It seems all the stories about his what he did to that woman, basically sexually trafficking her, was terrible. He's a really bad guy. Do I listen to many podcasts about the Street Fighting game Primal Rage? No, actually. I imagine there are dozens of podcasts about that. Would I ever do a MASH retrospective? You know, I feel like it's becoming more and more likely, to be honest. I might do that at some point. I don't have any plans to at the moment. I'm kind of enjoying being in the 1970s, and I'm looking forward to an old show, you know? Because All in the Family was a lot more fun than I expected it to be to cover. Someone asked if I had seen the Frasier reboot. Yes, I have. I thought it was all right. Yeah, I saw it. I would watch season 11 if they go on to do that. Or 12 or 13. What season is it? I forget how many seasons there were of Frasier. Wasn't it 11 seasons? So the reboot would be 12 and then 13, right? What are my thoughts on Jon Stewart being back on The Daily Show? I've been enjoying it, actually. I know Jon Stewart's not quite politically where I am, but I think he provides a pretty helpful doorway to further left thought for mainstream America. Did I comment on Iran attacking Israel? I haven't commented on that because I don't know nearly enough about it. I will almost certainly be looking into that after the stream, though. But I don't know. I don't really want to comment on something when I don't really know much of the facts about it. Because that seems irresponsible, especially for a topic like that. What games am I playing right now? Good question. I got Tales of Arise recently. I've been playing that. That's been fun. I also been playing Dragon Quest 2 or Dragon Warrior 2 because it's the Game Boy Color version because I'm playing a retro game lately. I also picked up Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 for the Game Boy Advance. Picked up. I had that since I was a kid, and I'm replaying it again for some retro vibes. I should play something new sometime, but I've just been playing retro games for months and months. I don't know. New games kind of bum me out. They're so predatory in their monetization. Whenever I see like season passes and microtransactions, my heart just sinks, and I'm like, I don't want to get half an experience here. And also, games are so long and they feel so padded out with just repetitive stuff. I say that as someone who's playing Dragon Quest. That's kind of grindy too. But yeah, I don't know. I'm having fun exploring older games at the moment. Someone asked if I had seen Curb Your Enthusiasm. I have. I'm a few seasons behind. At some point, I'd like to revisit it, though. I was really into it for a while. I think it's just the long breaks between each season's made it easy for me to fall off. Is Vince McMahon one of the Behind the Bastard episodes you listen to? Yes, it is. That was a pretty good multi-part of things. Someone asked if I've seen Twin Peaks. No, I have not. I would like to at some point. I should. I've always heard good things. One thing that sucked about that Ben Shapiro book I just mentioned is he loves Twin Peaks, which was, I don't know, that bummed me out. Let's get that lawsuit off the screen. Have I done Fernwood tonight? No, I have not. Let's go. What music do I enjoy? I enjoy so many different kinds of music. I couldn't even tell you what I'm listening to right now. It's like, a random mix that I pull up every now and again when I need some music. Someone saying I could be streaming retro games. I could be. I'd have to set that up, so I probably can't do that right now. Maybe that might be a fun way, like during these like Q&A parts where I just like play some footage of whatever retro game I'm playing. I think I would get distracted though. Someone mentioned Klonoa. I'm not too keen on Klonoa, to be honest. I've tried it a few times. It just, I don't know. Didn't click for me. Someone said try out Helldivers. I actually played the first Helldivers, but not the new one. It's very funny reading the reactions to people who seem to be shocked that it's satire. From like what little things I've seen of Helldivers 2, the satire is so obvious and on the nose. I mean, what is the resource? It's like element 017, which is just oil upside down, or 710, whatever. It's just oil. And yes, clearly satire. Yes, I have seen The Good Place. Someone asked. Yes. Someone asked, have I used AI yet for any of your video essays or experimented with the platforms themselves? No, no AI goes into my videos whatsoever. Um, I want to make my videos and my things, not a amalgamation of other people's ideas. So yeah, I've not used AI or experimented with any of it for my work or in my personal life. I think I tried once, or no, I considered trying AI for something, but I couldn't get the platform to work for whatever reason. I forget which one. Someone said, come join you in the Balatro collab. I do want to try that at some point. I just haven't had time. Okay. Someone asked, didn't I say I haven't watched Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? So whoever keeps asking. Marrow Cat. Well, I haven't. Well, there you go. Someone said I should get a Blue Jay VTuber avatar. That seems like way too much work. Since I almost never stream. Even though I've got a lot of people today. Maybe I should do it more often if I'm going to pull in this many. I'm not going to have time in the future. That's what I was thinking. Like the next few weeks, I'm going to be very busy finishing up this video, and then I've got some the next one to work on. It's hard to find time to stream. Someone asked which Dragon Quest is my favorite. Mine between 6 and 9, but 11 was incredible. I've only actually played 1, 2, and 11, so I'd have to say 11. I'd like to play some others, but it's going to be a while. RPGs take a lot of time. Vanessa, Alish Gallego. No, I don't speak Gallegan. Sorry. I have family members who speak it to me sometimes. And I feel bad when I don't understand them. My Spanish is not very good, but my Gallegan. Let's not even talk about that. How are they going to continue Dragon Quest without Toriyama? Good question. A better question is, how are they going to continue Dragon Ball without Toriyama? That's got me more worried. I know the designs are important to Dragon Quest, but I think they've got enough good pieces in the other areas to continue it. Although they need a new composer, though. They need to get rid of that guy who denies Japanese war crimes, because he's a bad dude. If you're enjoying older games, do you ever play on emulator? I feel like it's the only way to replay the good old stuff. I obey the law, sir. I obey the law. And I'm certainly not admitting to doing anything like pirating old games, especially, from those respectable publishers who don't just steal games from us when they remove licenses and things like that, which just happened with the club, didn't it? But there you go. Anyway, would I do an analysis of MASH? Yes, at some point I would like to. It might be a while though. I think there's some good MASH videos out there, aren't they? So let's go to some more questions. It's funny because a lot of these comments are responding to answers I gave earlier, so it's like game recommendations. I don't know. What have I been playing recently that I finished? If you want to find a cool old retro game that a lot of people don't think of too much, Kudelka for the PS1 is a very strange or different kind of offbeat RPG. It's like a gothic horror thing. If you're familiar with the Shadow Hearts games for the PS2, Kudelka is in the same sort of spirit. The voice acting is a little weird, but you're like this group of 3 people who are in this old house, and it's kind of got Resident Evil vibes, but it's set in like 19th century Wales. Give it a shot. It's also very short. I think I finished it in like 10 hours or something. But yeah, there's a very deep cut game recommendation for you. I don't know how you'd play that though. Might be tough to track down. Let's see. What else do we got here? Would I do any videos about Christopher Rufo's activism in detail? Maybe. I'd have to dig more deeply into it. Rufo is such a behind-the-scenes player, though, so it's a little tougher to make a video about him and still like get people to watch it. That's kind of why I try to cover more high-profile people, because you can talk about things not only that they do, but stuff adjacent to them. So Rufo's someone I've mentioned a few times. Uh, he might be interesting to dig into more directly, though. Someone's saying that Toyorama was mostly an advisor role to Toyotaro for Dragon Ball. I think he had more of a hand in putting together the plots than I think people suspect. One of the better examples of his impact, though, is his corrections he would make to Toyotaro's pages. If you see like the before and after, he would have like completely different panel ideas at times, and often his changes were so much better. I think it might still work, but we'll see. And with Dragon Ball Daima, apparently he was putting a lot into that, so we'll see how that turns out. That's probably gonna be like the last thing work he's done that we'll get to experience, and I think there's a good chance it'll be all right. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I still have visions of Dragon Ball GT in my mind and the utter trash that was. So I'm worried. But maybe we should just end Dragon Ball. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Okay. Charles in Charge retrospective. No. Someone asked for an analysis of the US version of The Office. I don't know. So everyone's talked about The Office to death. I'm kind of glad that I have one of the few ones about the original. People get upset when I call it the British version of The Office because like it's the original version. I'm like, all right, I'll say the original. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'd be very hard on the American version of The Office. I totally lost my place here when I was reading through this. Someone speaking about offbeat PS1 games. Someone asked about Vagrant Story. I'm planning to play Vagrant Story sometime in the near future. Someone mentioned Golden Sun for the GBA. Uh, I loved that game when I was a kid. Someone asked, any plans to do a Buffy the Vampire Slayer retrospective? That would mean that I'd have to watch the show. And I've spent so many years not watching it, even though people have insisted that I should. That part of me just never wants to watch it just to not give them any satisfaction. And it's kind of paid off slightly because people have turned on Joss Whedon some. It's like how everyone turned on J.K. Rowling, and I never read the Harry Potter books, and I feel very justified by that now. Yeah. So maybe like, can Joss Whedon get worse? So I'll feel even better about not covering or reading that or watching that. Bah, brain's getting a little wobbly. Someone said, have I heard about the sex trafficking incident of Vince McMahon? I was just talking about it a few minutes ago. Yeah, it's awful. A bad guy just got worse. Someone saying Gohan deserved better. Gohan deserves the best. Gohan is my favorite character in Dragon Ball. Don't you know? Someone asked if I watch or read any movie criticism of any kind. Uh, yeah, I don't have any specific people I follow. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm more interested in takes than personalities, and I like reading offbeat criticisms of various things. So I couldn't name anything off the top of my head, though. I mean, there's probably YouTube videos everyone's familiar with, but it's a good critical piece I've read recently about movies. Now that I think about it, I don't know. I haven't watched a lot of recent movies, so it's a bit difficult. And usually when I'm reading them, it's related to a video I'm working on. Um, so I haven't had time to look at many for fun. Or I'll just read snippets here and there. Yeah, this dumb chat keeps snapping back and forth. It's annoying. Someone said Suikoden is a fun ride. I've actually just played the first and second one of Suikoden earlier this year. It was a fun ride. I enjoyed both of them. Although the second one is a damn masterpiece. Great game. I even got all 108 stars because that's just how I roll. Did OJ do it? What do you think? Did the glove fit? Someone mentioned Maggie May Fish. I'm not familiar with the Morbid Zoo, but that Maggie May Fish has great media takes. I wholeheartedly endorse Maggie May Fish's film criticism. She's excellent. You want to know one of my big regrets about Maggie May Fish? I met her one time in real life, and I didn't get one of those cool notebooks she has on sale. I looked through the Nebula store or something. I almost ordered one of those online, but then shipping it to Canada made it cost like $50, and I couldn't justify spending that much on a notebook. And then I met her in real life, and I could have been like, bring one of the notebooks, and I'll bring you some money. And I could have just bought one from her. And now I'm like, oh no, no, I can't. I have to somehow contrive another instance when we'll be in the same place at the same time. And since we live in different countries, that's going to be very difficult. So, yeah, there's my Maggie May Fish regret. I don't know if she's still watching. She was here earlier. I just realized that. So if you're listening, Maggie, next time, if we're ever in the same place, bring one of the notebooks and I will buy it off you. That doesn't, and anyone else watching this can check out one of those notebooks because they're good and they look like an effective way of watching some media and reflecting on it in useful ways. Okay. What else does anyone have to say here? Do we have any more questions? I've been going for a while actually. I always start on the hour, but since I didn't this time, I didn't realize how much time had passed. The stream has been going on for over 3 hours. Huh. That's a long time. How long exactly though? 3 hours and 10 minutes. All right. All right. You can tell I don't do this very much. I like to stop at like round hours, and I guess I could talk for the next 50 minutes, but that seems like a lot. So I'm going to be wrapping this up soon. And people are rightfully drifting off because the energy's going down. Someone just asked, how do you keep going so long? It's finding an inner strength and power and summoning it within. Thank you, Ivan McRanda, for the super chat. You have a calming voice. Thank you. I'm going to have to get another drink here. JChat68 asked for luck in their skating performance. Best of luck, JChat68. I don't know what kind of skating that is, but I hope it goes well. Could be ice skating, could be skateboarding, could be a lot of skating. Audiobook when? What book do you want me to read? And also, how much do you want to pay me to do it? Because I don't sacrifice my voice for nothing. It's actually tough. Like, the All in the Family video I just did, it took me like almost 7 hours to record that. And my voice was shattered at the end. My throat was so sore. I think I have bad form when it comes to speaking for long periods of time because I don't do it very frequently. And when I do, it's a bit strenuous. But I think when my voice gets a little raspier, it sounds nicer. So it's kind of working in the right direction. Whew. Do I plan on doing more research streams like this again, where you read stuff by Ben Shapiro and company? Maybe, if people like it. It actually did very well. A lot of people showed up. We're down to 485, but it was actually, close to 800 and something at one point. Over 800, actually. So yeah, pretty good. A lot of new members, some super chats, which is always fun. So if you guys keep showing up and dropping a few bucks, then yeah, I'll do this more frequently. Why wouldn't I? It's also fun. I kind of like this. Someone asked if I'm from Toronto. Yes, I am. And I'm sort of thinking, I'm actually doing something in public next month. Maybe I'll do a stream before then so I can have more details, because right now I can't give you I can't give people any more details than that, really. It's going to be at Anime North. I'm not a featured guest or anything, but I will be on a couple of panels there. They don't have a schedule yet, so I can't tell you when they're going to be, but they are free, so you actually don't even have to pay for admission. So if people want to see that and see me talk about anime and video games, you can. But again, I can't do that until I have more information. So I'm going to try and have a stream before then. It's the end of May. It's when it all goes down. And then you can say hello to me in person. Isn't that exciting? Someone asked, any gaming streams in the future? Maybe. I actually use a gaming handheld for most of my retro gaming at the moment. So I might have to hook that up to my computer. That might be fun. A lot of kind messages here. Thank you for the kind words, truly. Someone wants to turn me into a prank vlog streamer. Probably not. All right. Let's end this in a few minutes. We have time for a few more questions. Any more questions? Any more questions? What's on your mind, people? If you do a gaming stream, what kind of games are you thinking of doing? I don't know. I think it would be fun to do a series of games, like me playing through all the Mega Man games, for instance. I think that'd be a fun idea, because theoretically I could do it all in one sitting, but I'm also, it's been a while since I played Mega Man. I might be bad. That's the thing I'm worried about doing a gaming stream. What if I'm bad and everyone sees how I'm bad at games? Anyway, someone asked when the All in the Family video is out. I don't know. We have to see how it's affected by copyright claims. That's the big issue right now, and I still have to like iterate it. If everything is well and good, that is to say, if it's approved and there are no copyright issues for it, it could be out within a week. Well, for patrons, and then for everyone else, like a week after that. That would be the dream. But I don't know. We'll have to see how the copyright claims go, because since the distributor is Sony, they usually do their claims on weekdays, so I have to wait until Monday to find out what they say about it. Hopefully they'll be cool. They were very cool about the nanny video, so I'm hoping for something similar. Someone asked, would I ever do a director retrospective going through a filmography? I don't know if I have the tools for that, to be honest. That'd be interesting, though. I don't know which director I would choose, and I feel like I'd have to learn more about film to do it justice. Actually, I have taken a film studies class, but it was like one course. I feel more comfortable with TV for some reason. Maybe because it's there's a lot less going on when it comes to camera placement and stuff like that. Particularly for sitcoms, because they're all kind of shot the same way, whereas film you have to be more aware of the camera, I feel. And there's a lot more going on with sound in film as well. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Play games that are purposely bad. I actually had that idea. I would love to do a stream where I play Michigan Report on Terror. For those unfamiliar, it's a PS2 game with some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard. It's... I really want to... I would love to stream that, so I might do that. Someone asked, how do I avoid copyright claims? My main channel is struggling. Have a backup channel where you upload videos and look at how the claims are affected there. And then just keep editing the video until it stops getting claims. And then when you put it on your main channel, it should be fine. Sometimes you can dispute them. If you have a nice professional sounding letter, that helps. Those are my general tips. It might vary on what you're covering, because like certain distributors or rights holders are very restrictive. Like music is very difficult, very, very difficult to use. But like old TV shows are not very well protected, I should say. So that's one thing I do. Talk about shows people are not so hyper vigilant about. Someone asked, what's my favorite ongoing sitcom right now? I don't have one. I watch very little modern TV these days. It's like, you think I'm going to watch a TV show when I have to watch like 200 episodes of All in the Family? I wish I had all that time. At some point. How bad is voice acting? Are we talking Megan Fox in Mortal Kombat 1 bad? Worse than that. It's like... Maybe I can pull a clip of it. Let's pull a clip of it. Is that... Oh no, it's not Detroit. It's Michigan. Something like that. What is this? I want to play some of this first. Ah, where is it? Maybe just Michigan? I don't want to have like commentary. Oh, this was a pretty good. You won't actually see what's going on.
And, oh my God! Carly! Oh my God! Nina! Oh my God! Justine! Oh my God! Paula! Oh my God! Ah! You know Dr. O'Connor too? Where is he? That Dr. O'Connor is so mean.
So yeah, that's just the taste of it. That's from God. What's that name? Character's name is Briscoe. Oh, oh, love this game's voice acting. So it might be fun to do a stream playing games like this. Someone asked for volume up. Really? I think this was. Am I not audible? I thought the. Anyway. But yeah, maybe we can do the stream where I play Michigan Report from Hell. That would be that'd be fun. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, but my voice is feeling some pain. Maybe it's I always do this. I'm like, let's wind down the stream, and then I talk for another 15 minutes. But I want to answer these questions now. What inspired you to make the channel a mashup of TV retrospectives and political commentary? Seems like an unusual mix. It was kind of a weird coincidence, actually. I was watching the Roseanne reboot, and then I went back and watched the original, and I couldn't help but think, I should talk to YouTube about this. At the time, I only had political stuff on my channel, but I thought maybe looking at the show Roseanne would be interesting because of its political leanings. And people loved it. And I'm like, oh, I got to do more of this. And I just went back and forth between political stuff and TV retrospectives. And yeah, that's how it all went down. Now I've been covering both. Also, someone asked if those like clips of the oh my god were the sex scenes. No, it's the characters are dying and then the character is reacting to the deaths. It's a bit tough when you can't see it and you just see the box art, isn't it? Funnily enough, Michigan only came out in Europe, but not North America. Well, it was originally in Japan, of course, but yeah, not in North America. Someone if I enjoyed any new bands. Not really. Probably some great ones up there, but I'm not up to date with any cool bands. Do I know the game Anonymous Agony? I've never heard of that at all. And yeah, someone says you play as the cameraman in Michigan. Yes, that is it. I've not actually I've not played Michigan, but I have seen enough footage of it to know what it's generally like. It reminds me of that movie Wreck, which is a Spanish movie about like a zombie outbreak, and it's all from the perspective of the cameraman. I think this movie predates that. I'm not sure, or not the movie. I think this game predates that. I'm not sure. Not sure of a lot of things. I'm not sure this stream should keep going. So this time for real, I'm gonna have to wind it down. But this was absolutely lovely. I had a great time. I want to do more streams, especially if they're as good as this one, because it was an absolute blast. But I have to find stuff for us to talk about, and then we'll all just sort of chill and have a nice wind down at the end, and it'll be like a cool thing we all do together. Thank you all for coming. I also hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you all look forward to the next video when it comes out. And so I'll say goodbye.